Good evening, everyone. Prior to us coming back into open session, I want to refer anyone who might need translator services to Ms. Paula Valbuena, who will speak to us about translation.
Thank you, President Brown. Buenas tardes, habla Paula Balbuena. Si necesita servicios de interpretación al español, por favor llame al 1805-324-7680 e ingrese el código de acceso 449-520-833 más la tecla numeral. Este es un número totalmente gratis. Nuevamente, llame al número de teléfono 1805-324-7680 e ingrese el código de acceso 449-520-833 más la tecla numeral. También puede acceder a estas instrucciones en nuestro sitio web en mcs4kids.com, dirigiéndose a la parte inferior en la página en Quick Links y haciendo clic en Board Agendas para ir a la agenda de esta noche. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Valbuena. Welcome to Modesto City Schools regular board meeting of June 5th, 2023. This meeting is now called to order. In closed session, the board gave direction to staff. We have a full board, so there will be no need for roll call. I would like to ask you to stand and join us for a moment of silence. Thank you. And, well, let's see. Pledge? Well, yeah, we'll move right to the Pledge of Allegiance. We don't have students tonight, so please join us. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, So good evening, everyone. This open session meeting of the Board of Trustees is being live streamed at the direction of the board. The live stream is available on the district's website, and the recordings will be available for viewing the day after the board meeting. Modesto City Schools has provided an opportunity for the public to provide comments at our meetings. It is outlined on the agenda. The public has been given an opportunity to call in and leave a voicemail, send us a comment via email, or appear in person before the board. Any public comments received via email or voicemail following the posting of the board agenda and prior to noon the day of the board meeting will not be read aloud, but have been transcribed and printed with copies provided to each board member prior to the start of the board meeting and are available to the public. The voice and email public comments will be attached to a future board meeting minutes for approval. This practice will continue until further notice. For members of the public that are interested in commenting in the future, we certainly welcome your comments. If you wish to address the board during the period for public comment on a subject that is not on the agenda, you must complete a public presentation request card and submit it to the board president prior to the period for public comment. If you need assistance from our translator, please indicate so on the request card. Every person who wishes to address the board, please fill out a card. You will find the cards in the lobby, and you can hand those to Ms. Chambers in the back of the room. And I already have a couple of cards, so if there are others that want to speak, make sure that you get the cards to Ms. Chambers. I also want to remind you that if you wish to make a complaint against a specific district employee, you should follow the district's personnel complaint procedure. Copies of that procedure are available in the lobby, as are agenda copies which outline the procedures we will observe during the period for public comment. The right to address the board does not exempt a speaker from any potential liability for defamation. If you plan to speak on a topic, please fill out a card now, as no cards will be accepted after the period for public comment has begun. The maximum time for any one speaker is 3 minutes, and we allow 30 minutes maximum for public comment in a meeting. I'd now like to turn the time over to Dr. Noguchi for welcome and announcements.
Wonderful. Thank you, President Brown. I'll keep it short tonight. I want to thank everyone for coming out this evening and showing an interest in our board meeting and also the recognitions that we have before us. I would like to first start by welcoming all the certificated and classified substitutes that are here this evening. On behalf of the board, on behalf of principals and of teachers, I want to express my deep appreciation for your vital work at our schools. Without you, it would be very difficult to maintain the high-quality education that Modesto City Schools provides. Your dedication and your ability to adapt, to be able to create a positive learning environment when you don't know what you're going to walk into each and every day is commendable, and it's definitely noticed. We are very thankful to you for your service and for you continuing your service here in Modesto City Schools. So thank you for your time with us. I would also like to thank the Love Stanislaus County Kids Program and Mrs. Arona for all their hard work and dedication in ensuring that we are setting the right conditions for all of our children. Again, your service makes a difference, and you are making a huge difference in the lives of our students, so thank you. With that, I'm going to turn it back over to President Brown.
Great. We now have some recognitions, and we'd like to invite Ms. Stephanie Arona to come to the podium.
Good afternoon, good evening. Thank you for allowing me this opportunity to speak on behalf of two amazing groups that I personally work with, and I've been very fortunate and blessed. The first recognition I'd like to call up is the Director of Second Chance Computer Refurbishing for Modesto, Mr. Scott, Terry Scott. He also has his sidekick, Mary Scott, his wife, and Mr. Shabazian, former employee or assistant principal to Modesto City Schools as well, so it's a collective effort. So I'd just like to kind of celebrate and kind of share what you've done to bless our students within Modesto City Schools. Director Terry Scott is recognized for his continued contribution of refurbished computers in Modesto City Schools. There were a need for computers for students and families that resided in Modesto and surrounding areas that could not afford computers. In 2010, Second Chance Computer Refurbishing nonprofit organization was formed to fulfill that need. As of 2023, their organization has distributed 17,000 computers to students and families. Second Chance Computer Refurbishing offers our graduating seniors in foster care refurbished computers at no cost. And just to share just a side note, I attended a graduation for one of my students, and I had presented her a computer, and she got all teary-eyed, and she goes, "Is this really mine to keep?" And she was heading to college, so that was extra money that she could put towards college, so that was a blessing. Terry and his team have been instrumental in removing barriers by providing devices to our students, not only in foster care, but to our parent engagement and outreach for parent participation incentives, to our adult education students, transition, special day class for our young adults with special needs, elementary schools, junior high schools, and high schools. And the list continues, not just within our Modesto City Schools, but also outside our Modesto City Schools. Terry always welcomes donations of computers that they can refurbish and get it back out to our students and families that need them. And I just want to thank you for being an amazing support to our students and families. So this is presented to you.
Thank you.
We'd like to Thank you for that. Thank you for that wonderful support that you provide to our students.
Oh, it's my pleasure. I come to work excited. Okay, my next recognition I'd like to acknowledge is the Director, Crystal McKernan, and Specialist Jill Sasser from Love Stanislaus County Kids Program. So if you would please join me. To say that she has a fan club in the audience. She has lots of family members, so that's always a joy. So just a little, Love Stanislaus County Kids Program is being recognized by Modesto City Schools for their contributions to Modesto City Schools students in foster care. Love Stanislaus County is a nonprofit that organizes citywide volunteer days in our county and has 4 programs that operate throughout the year, which are the Kids Program, Neighbors Program, the School Program, and the Seniors Program. I've been fortunate to be part of the Kids Program and many other ones. I would like to take a few minutes to highlight the Kids Program that Crystal and Jill have beautifully and thoughtfully created through hard work, determination, and passion to support our youth who are in foster care. The first program they provide is the Comfort Kit Drive, which occurs every year on the first Saturday of December. On that day, community volunteers help assemble 1,000 backpacks for kids in care, which are then distributed by social workers in our county and surrounding counties throughout the year. These kits contain new items such as blankets, flashlights, water bottles, and other age-appropriate hygiene supplies and toys. What's interesting, too, is a lot of times our students are moved and they are provided trash bags to put their items in to go to their new placement. So that's something that's very special, to have a suitcase to put their items in respectfully and move to their new placement, whether it's not their choice or not. Another program, Every Child Matters, where we hear from youth and professionals about what life is like for older youth in foster care. The goal of this event is to educate the community on how we can better support our youth and their caregivers. I have been fortunate to be a part of this forum as well, so thank you. Love Modesto Project. For the past few years, the Kids Program have collected birthday cards and gift cards. These cards are donated to Modesto City Schools, where I'm able to celebrate our students' birthdays each month via snail mail and to remind the students how special they are on such a special day. And this all stemmed from 3 years ago, where I would just send a $5 gift card to all our seniors, because I had 125 students. So I had to make it special, and then I shared that concern, and they're like, we'll take care of you. So every year or every month, I'm celebrating our students in our districts and their birthdays. Senior portraits, this is also very special. The Kids Program have volunteer photographers that will do a photo shoot with the senior and then provide a printed and framed picture along with graduation announcements. It's a beautiful gift to our students where their hard work, determination, and perseverance are recognized. And I have to say that many of my students don't even have baby pictures. And to have this type of rites of passage on print is just amazing. So I do want to share, I got permission from a former Modesto City School student who actually graduated from Modesto Junior College and now is at Sac State, still connected with her. They brought this today, and I'm actually going to see her this evening. Jones, a former Modesto City Schools program, and then announcements that they can actually celebrate with people as well. Something extra that we do. So one of the things that Trinisi had shared with me, she even said, and I did get permission, and she's an adult, so I'm sharing names, but she said, Mrs. Arona, I felt so special and beautiful when I was taking my pictures. So I just want you to know that she's an extraordinary woman, and you've blessed her in so many ways. I'd like to recognize Miss Crystal McKernan.
Once again, thank you for your service to our students, especially those that sometimes are forgotten. Thank you, Ms. Rona. Now we have special recognition that'll be guided by Mr. Henderson.
Yes, good evening, Board President Brown, trustees, Dr. Noguchi, and cabinet. It's a pleasure to be here to have the honor to recognize our certificated and classified substitutes. I just want to echo what Dr. Noguchi said in her comments, appreciating this part of our workforce. We often refer to our permanent probationary employees as our workforce, but this kind of behind-the-scenes silent workforce really is invaluable for the district. And we knew that during normal times. When the pandemic happened, we became acutely aware of how critical those services are for our students. And even post-pandemic, we've seen just an increase in absences and the need to call on our substitutes to support our school sites and our departments and have the continuity for our students ultimately to keep our sites and departments going. And without them, we would have had a very difficult time. And it's really special to be able to do what is now a second and hopefully an annual tradition to recognize at least a portion of our substitutes, those who are among the most active in our district. And we appreciate you so much. I'm going to allow Mr. Campbell the honors of handing out the individual awards. So Jesse Campbell, I'd be remiss if I didn't point out in the time of increased demand and the supply of our substitutes, we've been able to maintain very high levels of fill rates, and all of the work that substitutes do in the end benefits kids. And I appreciate Mr. Campbell and his efforts, as well as our staff who work daily with our substitutes, Isamar Alvarez-Lopez, who's out there in the lobby. They work on a daily basis. But it's you substitutes who take those calls 5:30 in the morning. You don't know where you're going. You go out to those school sites and fill in and figure out the lesson plans, whatever is needed. You're there for us. And we wanted to at least take some time out to appreciate you. Mr. Campbell. I think so, yeah, if we could do a handshake.
Thank you, Mr. Henderson. Thank you, Dr. Noguchi and Board of Trustees. This evening, we're recognizing our top performing substitutes. So that means that they had a fill rate of 80%. So they picked up the call. Picked up the call over 80% of the entire school year. And I'd also like to highlight, thank you to your commitment. With certificated, our fill rate this year was 99.5%, which means those students had a qualified individual providing instruction for them every day. And that happens because of everyone in this room. So I just want to commend you for that as well. So thank you very much. Tonight, what will happen is I'm going to call out your name. If you'll come on up, I will get you a beautiful certificate that will be handed out by Mr. Henderson and Dr. Noguchi. It also has a little bit of Starbucks for you in case you're a little slow at that 5:30 morning, little liquid caffeine for you. And then if you'll follow in and meet the Board of Trustees, we have some refreshments outside, and we'll have a nice big group picture at the end of it. If I could ask everyone just to hold their applause to the end, I would hate to have someone not hear their name. And then friends and family at the end will have an opportunity for you guys to join us outside for refreshments. So with that being said, we'll go ahead and get started. First up, Darcy Barraco Maestas. I am not going to provide different directions for the superintendent. Miss Virginia Berry. Joseph Bilodeau. Louis Caddy. You wear it well, Mr. Caddy. You look good. Joseph Cortez. Michelle Cox. Thank you. Armando Duran. Melissa Esquivel Ferris. Crystal George. Patrick Looker. Tamaria Mercer. Tanner Plaw. Evelyn Ramirez. Matthew Rodriguez. Gabriela Rubio. Lisa Silvera. Karina Angulo. Brenda Flores Vasquez. Janeth Mojica Lopez. Van Tran. That's everyone. So join me in giving them a big round of applause. So once again, I just want to thank them for their commitment to Modesto City Schools and our students. Great things happen here every day because of their ability to show up and pick up the phone, answer the call, and do good things for our kids. With that being said, this part is now over. Friends and family would like to join us outside for refreshments and a nice big group photo. Thanks for coming this evening. Thank you.
Keep it going, Mike.
We can now do a shuffle of available seating. If anyone would like to move closer to the front, you're more than welcome to shift seats. Or if you're comfortable, stay where you are. Okay, next on the agenda is the opportunity for board members to share their reports. I see a couple that have weighed in, so Trustee Lopez, you get to go first.
Good afternoon, everyone. Nice being out here. Thank you for being here. I don't have a long report. I just want to say that I loved all the graduations. Thank God there was a win. So, because that was rough. That would have been rough if it wasn't for the win. I got to go to a very special graduation last week. Was it last week? Yes. With the adults from the adult school. So I was mentioning to Anthony Little, I was like, I know we had COVID, but have we done this before? And because I know with COVID, you kind of lose track of the years. And he's like, we did, but we had seven students graduate. This year we have 100. So that's why, that's the great work that Anthony Little, Jorge Perez and all the staff is doing, that we're able to go from 7 to 100, and hopefully next year we're looking at 2, but wishful thinking here. But it was amazing seeing individuals, making the choice, for themselves and for the family to go back and put in the work after. It's a lot easier not to, right? Because we get busy with life and families grow, and it just becomes an extra step or going out of the way. But they decided to take that effort and put in that time, and so it was amazing just being in front of them all. So, and especially being seeing that from up there, it was great, and seeing their families just light up because they're putting in the effort for them. So I know our high school graduations are very emotional and very awesome. This was something different that I had never experienced. So it was amazing to be a part of it. Other than that, I attended the CIFA boards where I know there's other Mello-Roos coming into plays or neighborhoods being added. So it's gonna keep going. So it was interesting to see what's coming down the line for a growth for the city of Modesto. And that's my report. Thank you.
Next is Trustee Daily.
I have only been on the board, I think this is my 7th month, I think, for June. The graduations for me made all of the sacrifices that I've had to make to shift into adding this into my schedule well worth it. So I got to go to Elliott's graduation, La Loma Middle School or Junior High, Johansson, Davis, and then the adult school graduation. And probably my top graduations were La Loma, actually the junior high, that was a ton of fun, and then Elliott and the adult school, basically kind of for the same thing of both of those is the effort that it took to get there. And some of them, you can tell by the looks in their faces, they didn't think they were going to make it, and they did. And it was just so wonderful to have been included in all of those moments that we got to. Yeah.
Vice President Irvin.
Yes, likewise, about the graduations, it's always a highlight of the year, and very busy is probably the busiest time of the year as well, and very busy because also we're doing a lot of construction. So, but I had the pleasure of going to Elliott and Elliott and the adult school graduations are a little near and dear because those students, you could see it on their faces that you could see both, and I don't like to use the word two-faced it, but I use the word two-faced it because you saw their struggle and you saw their success, and so in that essence, they were two-faced it, because they were able to display both faces, the face of struggle and the face of success, and to receive their diplomas. Also went to Davis, Downey, and Roosevelt. Like I said, it's always good to see all those parents and families in the stands, and the stands is just so full of the accomplishments of their students. As well, I went to the NAACP grad recognition ceremony, as well as the Shackelford Career Fair, which was really nice. They had all careers there, even from Glidden, the garbage pickup and disposal company, because positions have to be filled, and so they had people representing there that made good money, good jobs, and so it was nice to see the spectrum of people, of careers that were represented at the Shackelford Career Fair. They did a wonderful job of hosting and displaying and welcoming everybody there. Also was at the CIFA board meeting. As Trustee Lopez said, they're still growing here in Modesto. So our high schools to the north will be getting more students on the horizons. So, which is a good thing, I believe. And also went to a very, very good meeting at LCR. LCR put on a meeting that included our sheriff and Jennifer Marsh from the county and talked about fentanyl. You know, this really gave me a real bird's eye view of the fentanyl crisis, not only across the country, but in our community. And so to be able to, and with that, I decided on my own to go do some more research and came across a documentary, a very recent documentary. It talked about a big fentanyl operation that was operating out of all places, Utah. And there were two victims. They were friends, best friends, and they thought they were getting ready to take Oxycontin, or whatever they call it, and it was actually laced with fentanyl, and they both died from one pill. They took one pill each. And you think, you know, if you've taken an aspirin or something like, you know, taking an aspirin, so that's one pill. That one pill killed both of those best friends. And so I just found out the opiate crisis or the fentanyl crisis is real, really real in our community. So it was a very good meeting to attend. I appreciate LCR for hosting a very informative, important meeting in our community. And that's it for me. I think that was enough.
Okay. Trustee Maestas.
Whew. Well, back to the graduations. I went to the graduations, and I think all of us really enjoy those. I got to go to Loma and Enoch's. Wow, over 600 students. It was huge. It was outside, and it was like an army. And I mean, really, the crowd looked like we were at Lollapalooza or some. That tells you how old I am, right? Lollapalooza. That we were at some sort of. It was just there was so many people. There were so many students, and we shook a lot of hands that night. But it was awesome to see all of those students taking the stage and just being so happy. And one of the students that addressed, that got to speak was a foreign exchange student from Italy. And I thought her speech was incredible and just pointing out some of the things that were different from her culture and the culture that she experienced over this last year. So I thought that was just a really cool student to have speak to the students about her experience this year as a senior and graduating from an American high school. Lastly, I just want to say thank you to all of the teachers and admin and staff that are working summer school this year. My son just started esports, and he had a really good time the first time at Enoch's, and he can't wait to go back. And so that's one of the enrichment programs. But there are a lot of other things going on, and just to have the space for students to go and be somewhere and do something throughout the day and be safe is an important place to be. So I really thank all of the people that are working so hard to provide those opportunities for all our students this summer.
Trustee Mejia.
Yes, I also graduations. I did have the privilege of attending two the graduations, and I was able to see some students that I kind of work with when they were in middle school. So that was pretty amazing to see, and also some extended family members that were there. So that made it extra special. I also really enjoyed the opportunity to hear. But as has a tradition, which I think it's pretty unique. To hear the languages of a good chunk of the population of students that go to Modesto High. So that's always a treat to hear all those languages kind of be spoken and welcoming the parents. I think it just shows the value of welcoming those communities into our school district. So that was pretty, to me, is a highlight. Even though I hear it year, it still gives me chills that people feel welcome and present there at those graduations. Also, I wanted to say that we are continuing to work on the ethnic studies as a committee, as a council, and so that's pretty amazing, the work that's going to continue into the future. And so I just want to rate that the work is going, and we definitely going to continue to expand our group, our council, our committee as we move forward. So thank you.
Trustee Marks?
Thank you. So great to hear all the good news tonight. I attended the Modesto City Schools retiree ceremony. That was so awesome in this room. That was really special. Some very long serving teachers retired and those in classified staff. So that was pretty amazing. And then I also attended the Delegate Assembly in Sacramento for the California School Boards Association. We had an interesting speaker there. There was a whole panel on cyber attacks, which I was not aware of all the stuff that's going on with cyber attacks, and hearing about some different school districts. They had an actual board member or employee from San Luis Obispo that spoke about it. And it was just very interesting. Cyber attacks are up 36% this year in education, just education. So this is California and nationwide. The company or the organization that came and spoke was CalREN, which is California Research and Education Network, but their leader is from South Carolina, and he flew out to give us that update. They're a global community of hundreds of thousands of R&E institutions, or Research and Education Network institutions. So it was really helpful to hear what kinds of protections are out there. Every school district, he said, should get insurance because you're going to get attacked. He said it's not if, it's when, and are you prepared? So it was a very big wake-up call, I think, to the 300 board members that were in that room. It was good for us to actually take that back to our districts and just remind people in our areas of what's going on. I was able to share some of the things. We had breakout sessions on late start, and how did that affect our community? How did it affect our parents? Who is our districts handling it? How are districts handling it? Such a huge variety. Biggest concern, I think, was parents trying to get to work on time, having to get kids to school at different times now. It was really difficult with the bus schedules, especially in smaller communities, and really difficult for those that are in rural communities trying to keep up with how do they do that. So it was a good dialogue, and it was good. They took all the information they're going to see, and then we'll lobby our legislators on any things that we want changed on that late start schedule, or at least let them know what kinds of struggles we're having with the daylight being difficult for our students that play outside sports that don't have a place to, they don't have lights. Like if you're in golf, or if you're in, I was trying to think some of the other sports they listed off. Anyway, one guy was from surfing. I was like, okay, that's a new one. I've never heard that before, but we don't have surfing here. So it was just doing sports in the dark you can't do because there's no lights out there. So, and then I attended the Shackelford Career Day. It was so awesome for me, especially to be there with the students, with all the different careers, but also with 2 former board members. So one is Mayor Zwalin, and the other is Judge Villalobos. So I got to serve with them on this board for 8 years, and it was really special to have them there sharing their new roles in our community. That was really special. Then lastly, I attended 3 graduations. So I went to Grigori High School, did Modesto High, which was really fun too. And then the amazing graduation that I got to go to this last week was in Colorado. It was the United States Air Force graduation. My brother's son was graduating from the Air Force, and Sully Sullenberger was there. He's the guy who landed the airplane into the Hudson. He's class of 73. So 50 years later, 2023, that class is like the mentors to this class. So now this class that this year, they're going to be doing it in 50 years in 2073, which sounds so far away. But the thought of that is kind of cool too. So they mentioned that. But I just wanted to read a quote from President Biden, who did the speech, and just remind us, and I wanted to let you know, it was interesting because the news, first off, didn't share the information correctly about the president's fall. We were there, we watched him, and we saw how he fell and why he fell, and it was because he fell on a sandbag that was placed for the prompters. And I was impressed with him in an amazing way. He did a 30-minute speech, and then he stood up there, and we all just did graduations. And you know how grueling that can be, he stood in the sun for 2.5 hours after his speech and saluted and shook hands with every graduate, 967 graduates. So he did it on his own, no assistance. He was there the entire time, and he's 80 years old. So I was really impressed with that. But here's a little brief snippet of his speech that he talked about. He said, "You are ready for greater responsibilities. You have competence the years have prepared you for. It's defined by history and tradition and so much change. Strive to be worthy of their confidence as leaders. Lead by the power of our example. No matter what changes come, your character, your moral clarity, your capability must never waver. The nation needs you. The world stands at an inflection point. It's when you drive 60 miles an hour, turn 10 degrees, can never get on the same track as before. The decisions we make today will determine what the world looks like decades from now. Make sure the future is fundamentally aligned to our values." And I thought that was really good. It was 30 minutes, and I just took a little snippet of it, but he did a great job on his speech. So I just was so honored to be there, but I thought about our own students graduating at that graduation and just the things that he said, preparing our students for the future and that they will be our leaders one day. So just thinking about who we are as a district and where we're headed, and that we do have an impact in the culture and in the world that we live in. So it was really good. So thank you.
Thank you. I know this has been a long presentation, but I've got a few things I need to share. So first, I need to do a visual shout out to Shackelford. And I can get into a shirt really fast right now because I just lost some weight. So this was their career day shirt. And I was amazed. This was end of the school year, and it was so exciting to observe love of learning in the faces of all the children as they were learning about careers and opportunities and about colleges. Our kids are learning early that they have great futures, and I love seeing that. In addition to that, I did attend several graduations and one promotion ceremony, and this was historic. This was the first graduating class or promoted class from the Tuolumne K-8 school that we have. So that was held at the State Theater, and it was a lot of fun because new traditions were started that night. And I also need to tell you that I loved graduations this year, but I have never been so sick in my life as I was graduation week. But I had to be there because that's why we serve. We serve to see our kids finish. And nothing was going to keep me from being able to be there and shake hands with those kids. And I was able to go to not only Tuolumne's promotion ceremony, but also to Byers' ceremony that evening, and Enoch's the next night. And what I love about graduations, not just the ceremony, but the fact that I'm able to look each one of those kids in the eye, and sometimes I force a smile on them, but I get the opportunity to see each one of them before I shake their hands and to realize what they've accomplished and be able to share in their excitement for their futures. So graduations are amazing, and as has been said, the adult school graduation capped it all off to once again look in the faces of each one of those graduates and see their accomplishments and be able to celebrate their futures as well. And cannot end a school year without mentioning the construction committee meetings that I attend monthly. And it's so exciting to this time, or this month, be able to look forward to all of the great construction that's happening at all of our campuses throughout the district. You don't have to drive very far to see a huge project going on. Our bond money, our community support is active and in progress, and we thank the community for supporting us with Measures D and E and Measure L. And it's exciting to see what great things we're now able to start doing at the high schools, to see the kind of things that we've been seeing for the last 4 years at our elementaries begin to happen at the high schools. So thank you to the community for supporting Modesto City Schools and allowing us to make this great step forward in progress. I think that's the end of our report. As you can see, nobody sat still this month. We all were out celebrating and excited to see progress happen, and we're all excited about the event that happens tomorrow morning where we break ground again for once more another construction project at Tuolumne Elementary, Tuolumne K-8. So good things are happening, good things continue to happen, and we're excited to be able to serve the community and serve our students here on the board. So thank you. And I'm going to slip out of the shirt so it doesn't get too hot up here. Okay. Now we move on to item A8, the approval of the consent agenda. Are there any comments from the community regarding the consent agenda items? And if so, please come to the podium. I don't see any wishing to speak on the consent. So do I have a motion to approve the consent agenda?
I just want to make a comment. I'll make a motion to approve the consent agenda. I just wanted to say that I thank staff for helping me with the health parallel on financial math and on the on health parallel and on financial math parallel. So I appreciate the time they spent to help me understand. These are for our special ed students, but that are, so it's similar to the general ed information. And so I would know that parents had options to opt out, just like any other curriculum or any other issues that they had. And then I wanted to make one comment about outdoor ed. It's in this, and I'm super excited because we didn't have outdoor ed for many years. And I just have to say, when I saw it, I was like, woo! So I just had to do a shout out for outdoor ed tonight.
Good. Thank you. So motion by Trustee Marks, second by Trustee Mejia. Those in favor? Aye. And looks like that was unanimous. Next, we move to the approval of order of discussion and action items. Dr. Noguchi has requested that we pull an item.
Yeah, I'd like to pull B12. That's my contract for next year. It's the attachment is from last year, so I need to have that updated. So it was inadvertently left off, so I'll bring this back June 20th.
Okay, so do we have a motion to approve the order of discussion items with that change? I saw a motion from Trustee Lopez, second by Trustee Mejia. Those in favor? Aye. And once again, that was unanimous. We are now moving to the period of public presentations. I have 4 cards tonight, and I'll ask each speaker to come to the podium and address the board, and you'll each have 3 minutes to speak. So our first speaker tonight will be Dwayne Heinrich.
Good evening, Mr. President Brown, members of the board. My name is Dwayne Heinrich, and I want to thank you once again for the opportunity to speak tonight. I'm here tonight to make a couple of comments regarding the dress code that you passed last meeting, specifically now allowing bare midriff. One reason for dress codes is to limit distractions in the classroom. Ask yourself if bare midriff is a distraction. Students are in the classroom to focus on learning and what the teachers are saying. This is going to be very hard to enforce. How short can a top be? How low can a bottom be? Bikini swim tops are not undergarments, so they would be allowed. You have just opened a can of worms as to how much skin can be shown with this dress code. Part of the problem is a lack of uniform enforcement from the teachers and staff. I would ask you to reconsider that parents and staff have spoken loudly against this matter based on your survey and from your committee. You wanted to compromise with the students. I would say you have already compromised by allowing students to wear hats and hoodies in the classroom. What was the point of the survey? Obviously, you didn't listen to the parents or the staff. Are not the parents the ones that elected you? I'm asking you to make a motion to reconsider this portion of the dress code for the next board meeting. Thank you.
Thank you. Our second speaker is David Eck.
Thank you, folks, for giving me a chance. Thanks for what you do up here. I know it's a lot of extra work, and so thanks for that, and for giving me this chance to speak as a concerned member of the community. So I just want that to go down on record. People say, well, I don't think folks care. They're not showing up. No one's here that's concerned about this dress code thing. I'm concerned. I'm speaking for some of these members of the community. I know quite a few. But anyway, I don't think this gets the advertisement it should. So anyway, I had something I was going to say tonight, but this afternoon, I saw something I want to share with you that I think fits also. I'm going to say them both. I live down the street, and when I stopped by to drop something off, stepping out of the door, there's a couple guys on the porch, and they each had a dog, a young dog, but kind of big and dumb, a baby, just not a real smart dog yet. Well, they knew they shouldn't be on my porch, so they're getting off real fast. I didn't even have to say anything. They're picking these dogs up and walking away. And if I had a leash, because I've done this before, I would have given it to them. If I had a rope or something, because I know these people can't control these critters like they ought to. For whatever reason, they're just letting them run around. So I go out to get my truck, and by the time I turn around, I'm headed down this direction. One of these dogs is dying in the street. Somebody hit it. There's cars all around. I think it's dying. It thinks it's dying. No one knows what to do with this thing. It was tore up. Sometimes we need guidelines. These people probably thought, hey, my dog wants to be free, wants to run around and be happy, But sometimes they need a master, an adult, a person with a little more, knowing what's going on, to think for these people, for these children I'm talking about right now, the students. When I was in here last time, I heard one of the board members, I'm not picking on anybody, but I heard this example, and he said, well, I had two daughters. When they went to school, they had two different kind of outfits. One they went to school in, one was in their backpack. I don't know if that person is aware of that or that's a story he figured out 20 years later. All I know is that doesn't mean it should be okay now, because that's hard. It's hard to monitor your kids, or it's hard for teachers to do that. Sometimes you got to do some hard stuff, you know? It's not an excuse. That's like saying, hey, I had kids that cheated a lot in school, so let's let them cheat, because it's hard to regulate it. That's not the way to do it, folks. I say, be the adults in future decisions. Please think for people that don't have enough experience yet to know how to think straight. That's what I'm saying. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Felipe Alvarez.
Already know that we have 3 minutes each speaker, but tonight, since I am interpreting in Spanish, how long is it gonna take for him?
It's a total of 6 minutes. So with the interpretation.
Okay. He speaks Spanish well, but he's just nervous.
A veces no me entiende mi inglés, por eso.
Sometimes it's hard for people to understand him. Tonight, I'm here because of my son's education.
He platicado con algunas personas que están aquí.
I've spoken with people that are here tonight among us.
Debo mencionar, primero se me olvidó saludar al presidente, saludar al presidente, saludar a todos los miembros, se me olvidó hacer eso.
He forgot to say hello to all of you. Sorry
Okay.
about that.
Bien, los dos temas que vamos a hablar es educación para los aprendices de inglés.
He would like tonight to speak about 2 topics. First will be education for English learners and education for kids with special needs.
Hace años yo estuve aquí parado en este lugar y les recordé que Joaquín Ávila llegó hace muchos años para crear este ambiente.
Many years ago, I was here to remind you and reminding you about Joaquín Ávila, that he was part and he created this
I will try to do it in my English because she's not saying what I try to tell. I had to control my nerves. Several years ago, I was in this podium, and the reason was because Joaquín Ávila did a presentation to this board and also to the Modesto City Council. And the reason was the districts. And I'm very pleased that the environment has been changed. If Joaquín Ávila will be here tonight, he will be very pleased that his ideas, they work. What he tried to do is to make the society inclusive. Because the only person that remains that I remember is Cindy, the only one that, I don't know if you remember me. I have meetings with Mark and his staff, And the reason being is because my son has problems with special education. And also he was in the category of English, as an English learner. Through the years, I have been doing my work, and I have been working with them, having several meetings. I have been in committees, all your committees that you have. Some of you recognize me, and I get frustrated, then I move away. And once again, I had to, because my son now is going into high school, the situation is that he's going unprepared. Unfortunate, you people are responsible. I say responsible because you're giving him this paper that he has A's and B's, and he cannot read at the second level. Then you are responsible. I'm making you guys responsible because you're not listening. That is something that is extremely important. The last time that I was here, we had lawyers, and we tried to work with the English learners. Unfortunately, we lost. But you guys supposed to have another program for English learners, and I don't know what I'm going to do myself now. But if we had to go through the process of litigation, I will do it. I had to present to because you're the administrator. And I went to the meetings. I'm not going to pronounce which one was the high school or the junior high. But this is lots of paper, but you guys don't listen to us. Many parents are discouraged in relation to that. And the last time that I talked to the principal, I told him, you had to go into some cultural competency training. Your administrators, your principals, your vice principals, they need to have a training, cultural competency. They're not competent. They don't even know how to say hello to the parents. But the situation is how I'm working out. Because my son is going to high school and you don't have the programs, even though I have been asking you guys for that, that's why I'm here. Services and programs. I review your budgets. You guys have money. You have resources. The reason is why we don't have services and programs. You guys don't listen to us. You pretend to listen to us. Unfortunately, you just pretend. Then I would like, I don't know, it's gonna be, we're going into vacation, but probably you need to talk to Romero. She has the full story. I had to do studies, pushing you guys, your district, to do studies on relation to education. I had to do all that, to push him for that, because your system doesn't work. I try everything that you guys give us, but we just lose the time with you guys. And the problem is my son is growing up, and he's growing up with this information.
Thank you, Mr. Alvarez. Your time has been completed.
Thank you for listening.
Thank you. Our final speaker is Aaron Anguiano.
Good evening, Board President, Mr. Brown, and board members. Today, well, I'm a supporter of public education, and I had 3 children in school: elementary, junior high, and high school. And my little girl, she's right now at Martone in summer school. But as you know, I come here and I see what you're trying to do with the programs and all that, and then I test them with my children. As you can see, I I'm always watching to see what happens. If really what you're saying that you're doing, educating our children, is really what really happens on campus, and sometimes it doesn't. But anyways, I started coming here like 4 years ago, 5 years ago, when I became president of the Latino Community Roundtable. And before that, I used to come sporadically. But then I wanted to really know what's going on in the school, especially that I'm the president of the LCR. And so I noticed there's two big problems that slow down the learning in the schools of our Latino children. One is the grading, and the other one is discipline. Grading because the teachers discriminate against our children and downgrade them, and they grade effort and participation and all these character things that you have around this room. You know, I was wondering, why don't you have math, English, science? Like sometimes in your discipline, you punish these things. When you feel a child doesn't have one of these characters, you punish them in those intervention centers. And that really is really upsetting. And I think you shouldn't be punishing children in intervention centers because that's my job. You know, you're not the police. You know, I think you're just feeding the juvie system. You talk about how nice it's to see the graduate, but you didn't see the ones that didn't graduate. You didn't see the ones that went to juvie. No, you didn't, you know. So that's why I wanted to talk to you about intervention centers. And I'm passionate about it, and it makes me nervous and upset too, because my children have been put in intervention centers 2 or 3 times. And it's a lot of work to get a child caught up again. It takes like a month after you detain them in those intervention centers for 3 to 5 days. It's really upsetting, and it's really, their grades go down, and a lot of work. It's just for me to get them out of the hole, it takes a lot, and I'm a lawyer. So we had some meetings with the community because I was accused that I'm just speaking for myself. But the whole community thinks that you're not doing any good service holding those children in intervention centers, holding them out of the classroom when the child's just quiet, sitting there in the intervention center because he's being punished for his offense and consequence, and he's going to spend 2 or 3 days in the intervention center. And that you have a teacher that helps him to do homework, and a campus supervisor, and a counselor. Keep the counseling, it's fine, but get rid of the campus supervisor and teacher and use the money for counseling. Counsel those children to act better. You know, don't punish them. It reminds me of the Indian schools when they used to punish them or kill them. Thank you.
Thank you. Again, although we cannot engage in discussion or take formal action on items that are not on the agenda, we thank you for following the protocol and addressing the board, and for taking the time to share your views with us this evening. The next, Modesto Teachers Association, do you have a report? No. And is there someone from California School Employees Association wishing to report? Don't see anyone. Next item is a report and approval of proposed service agreement with Modesto City, with City Ministry Network for 2023 and 2024.
All right. Good evening, Board President Brown, Board of Trustees, Superintendent Noguchi, Cabinet members, and guests. My name is Fallon Ferris, and I'm the Equity and Intervention Specialist. And tonight I'll be presenting on our request and approval for services agreement with City Ministry Network for the 2023 to 2024 school year. So the purpose of this presentation is to provide the Board of Trustees with background on HYLC's Hispanic Youth Leadership Council clubs on school campuses, provide an overview of the services that would be provided through the service agreement, address any questions that might arise after this presentation, and then lastly, seek approval of the services agreement with City Ministry Network. This presentation most aligns with Goal 3, to provide a safe, welcoming, and respectful learning environment for every member of the school community while ensuring effective district-wide communication for students, staff, families, and community partners. Hispanic Youth Leadership Councils, HYLCs, are cultural clubs that were established here in our very own Stanislaus County in 1989. They were created initially to address the achievement gap between our Latino students and their counterparts. HYLCs have evolved since they first began in 1989. Although they still focus on closing the achievement gap, they have also expanded to support students in creating pathways to success and preparing students for leadership opportunities within our own community. HYLCs are incredibly important. Not only do they provide a safe space for students to discuss and explore their cultures, it also allows for peer-to-peer support and mentorship, career awareness and cultural awareness, leadership development opportunities, learning about serving the community that you come from, and then providing a space to create social activities as well as be a part of social activities that are in the greater San Jose County. So the role City Ministry Network would play as the lead agent would be in expanding our HYLCs into all of our junior highs and middle schools, high schools, and our continuation school, overseeing and supporting these club activities, cultivation of student club liaisons and mentors, creation of a network of partners in our community to support the career exploration and paths to post-secondary education, organizing large-scale events, including field trips and opportunities to meet with other HYLCs across Stanislaus County and San Joaquin County. And then lastly, the opportunity to attend cluster meetings and leadership retreats. And so I'm going to step aside and give the microphone to the Chief Executive Officer of City Ministry Network, Marvin Jacobo, to give a little bit more insight into all that they'll offer in this service agreement.
Well, first of all, thank you for considering partnering with City Ministry Network. It's quite a privilege for us to partner with you. It's been a lot of years since we've all been volunteering and working with these HYLC clubs. You all know Latino young people have incredible potential. And even though these clubs are not limited to Latino students, the truth of it is we have thousands of them. I can remember with Candor in 1989, I was the one who started the clubs. And I had the privilege of walking on Modesto High School one lunch period and seeing these literally thousands of young people and seeing the incredible potential that they could have and impact they could have in our communities and in their communities. We piloted 2 programs, Modesto High School and Downey High School, and from there it has expanded. I had to step away for a few years, and then in August, the leadership of Hispanic leadership clubs were going to be disbanding. They came to us and said, would you take them over? We all know that there's thousands of graduates in our county who from these programs and these clubs, and we want to expand them, make them better. They're great right now, but I know we can make them better. I do thank you for Fallon, who's been great, and Mark, who's been terrific, as they have helped us massage and understand your language and how these things might work. As you know, as a community nonprofit, sometimes it's difficult for us to navigate how all these things work. And so I do want to compliment your staff on how they've helped us. Here is our vision long-term. Our vision is this, is that we want to create a pipeline of skillful Latino leaders to take their leadership place in the fabric of their communities. And we believe that can start in elementary school and begin to move them with core values and competencies so that as they begin to blossom older and they get older, they can begin to take their place. So I want to thank you. We'll have questions if you need to, but that's what I want to say to you at this point.
All right, so we appreciate your time and attention this evening and look forward to your valuable feedback. Our next steps are going to be requesting the approval of this 2023-2024 service agreement with City Ministry Network in the amount of $82,225. And then the next step will be begin implementing HYLC expansion plan within this new school year. Thank you for your time, and now I would like to open for questions after we receive any public comment.
Great. Do we have any comments from the public on this agenda item? Ms. Martinez.
Good afternoon, or good evening, I should say. Oh my God, I've been very busy. 28 districts, 3 counties. I've been running. Anyhow, it's always a pleasure to come back to MCS. I do have some questions. Debbie Martinez, and I represent community under the umbrella of Latino Community Roundtable, and we are La Raza Parents Union. I have several questions. You stated that you want to create a pipeline starting at the elementary level. I exposed the school to prison pipeline. We currently have, I think, Youth for Christ contracted here? I'm not sure. I know that they have it as in series, but HYLC, Hispanic, what Hispanic population are you gonna really be reaching? Is it the ones that are being in the intervention rooms, as Erin talked about? Is it the ones that are in the special ed, as Felipe talked about? What Hispanic children are you really gonna reach for all this money? My questions, thank you.
Any other comments from the community? Please.
I have been in a nonprofits, and I don't know you, but it's so difficult to gain funds, and it's difficult to run a program. But what you're presenting is very appealing. I don't know you, but
Can we have you speak in the microphone? We don't hear.
I don't know you. I don't know your program, but you're concerned about leadership, especially in the young children. I'm very pleased to hear these kind of programs.
Thank you.
I know Mr. Jacobo, and I have full confidence that he can help the district and help Latino children. I know him for a few years, and he's a pretty humble, decent man. And I'm glad to hear that he's gonna try to create a pipeline of leaders instead of a pipeline to prison. And the document I gave you, that's about how you come full circle with this pipeline to prison and intervention rooms. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, comments or questions from the board? Oh. Vice President Irvin.
Good evening, my friend Marvin. We go back a long time. And also, I go back a long time with HLC and HYLC. I was once president of HLC, back in the day, as we would say. And so I want to reiterate, I didn't know that HYLC was going to be disbanded by HLC. I remember the days when they had hundreds of kids, and kids used to come from Merced, Atwater, Weston Ranch, Oristimba, Patterson, and they would all meet at the Boy Scout facility over there off of Pallandale. And like I said, their advisors would bring them to the monthly meetings that they had, and a lot of outstanding young people participated in HYLC, and many of them transitioned to college, careers, and military, Boy Scouts, and things like that. So I'm definitely on board with maintaining that pipeline of outstanding students and student leaders. My question centers around the mentorship. So is that peer-to-peer mentorship and support? And I want to know, in terms of the mentorship, what would that look like? Is that one-on-one? Is that group mentorship? And then what type of training will the mentors be going through?
Okay, there are about 4 questions there, so if I don't get one. Right now, it is adult to student. We've already been talking and having discussion about what other models around the country are peer-to-peer, because I still believe that is the best, that's the best model. In a couple of weeks, we'll be starting our first officer training or leadership training, so any kids can come. And part of that training is going to be how to encourage your young people. As the year goes on, we have in the curriculum a piece where we want to begin to, I'm going to call it, educate the young people on looking for signs for troubled friends. I think you're a counselor. We don't want our kids counseling or even taking emotional responsibility for their friends, but also to connect them with adults. So right now, as we've taken over the model, it is adult to young people. The advisors do a lot of one-on-one with their officers. They do a lot of one-on-ones. Most of it, though, is at this point is group. I can tell you, John, as you and I have talked for years, we want to move toward also a strong peer-to-peer model as well, but we're not there yet.
Right,
That's the first question.
And that's that's good that you recognize that and you understand that, because although it may seem like, oh wow, peer-to-peer, that's easy, that's actually the most difficult model to do, and that's from experience, because there's just a lot that goes into the training of a peer-to-peer mentor, recognizing their place as a peer mentor, and so to prevent things that sometimes naturally happen or could happen in a mentor situation.
Now, these clubs are student-initiated and student-led, as all associated student body clubs are. And so we are going to, one of our big-time goals as time goes on is going to be to strengthen these young people in that skill, connecting them with their principal or somebody on their campus who can walk them through all the services that are on campus, because a lot of kids just don't know the amount of services and the kinds of services that are available to them. And so that'll be one of the things we do early on, and we're going to do early on, is to connect our young people with this information so that they can begin to work, build their toolkit.
Okay, and then I would suggest also checking out the National Mentor Partnership, and utilizing their foundation for those best practices in mentorship. They have them both for the adults and the peer mentoring, and utilizing those resources both on a national level and in the California mentor organization as well, to utilize those best practices, from California. But the national ones, it's a guide that helps you from step 1 to step 8, on the best practices. And so I definitely.
Yeah, right now we've been spending quite a bit of time with Kim Barber, with NAMI over at SCO, and then Friday Night Live, and looking at their models as well, so we can gain some measurables and best practices. So, but I did get you down. Thanks.
And that was it. I wish you many blessings and in turn of taking on that new structure for HYLC. I think it's much needed, and hopefully we can continue to allow it to grow to to its potential, for our students. So
Thank you, John.
Thanks again.
And we'll have you come and you can talk about what it means to be an entrepreneur.
Yeah.
This is, and make it happen.
Oh, yeah, most definitely.
All right, Trustee Daily.
I have a couple of questions, but first I want to make comments in reference to the fact that I love that we are going to contract and work with city ministry networks more. I love the fact that we're working with Center for Human Services and Youth for Christ. One of my questions is, how are we going to collaborate between, I know you guys have a collaborative relationship outside of Modesto City Schools, but how is Modesto City Schools going to work together in order to have all of these collaborating so that we're not doing the same thing in all of the different programs?
We will bring Student Support Services maintains the contract on Youth for Christ, Center for Human Services, and hopefully with the board approval of city ministries. So we will work together to make sure that there's not duplicative or overlap. We will come together in terms of what each one could provide and be able to share that information.
I also appreciate the fact that Mr. Jacobo said that we want to make sure that we can have students identify where their peers maybe need some support, but definitely not provide that support. So my other question is, what are we going to spend the $82,000 on? Where exactly is that going?
We're going to hire, we've been already working with a consultant on some data collection, retention, reporting, performance monitoring. We're going to hire somebody who's going to be directly responsible for Modesto City Schools campuses. Somebody mentioned the other county schools, where we do have 28 in 4 different counties, but this is going to be going specifically to improve the health and well-being of the Modesto City Schools clubs, campuses, identifying the active clubs. We've already been talking to a lot of the advisors, a lot of the campuses, trying to identify which ones are interested, which ones are not, where do they need strengthening, and so that's where the money is going to be going. So I would say right now, the data collection, retention, reporting, performance monitoring, advisor strengthening and recruiting, and then increase the number of active clubs that are going to be on campus. That's where we're going this year.
Again, thank you very much.
Thank you. And I appreciate that question on collaboration because we've all been talking about that, about doing all that. And even the organization that you mentioned, we all are, I'll say, close friends. So we want to do that. So.
Trustee Marks?
I thought I was lower down on the list, so thank you. I just wasn't paying attention. I was listening so intently. Just thank you. I wanted to say, appreciate you, Marvin, and just that you have a great reputation in our school district. He was a former employee. You've got a great reputation in the community and partnering. And I think this is just taking that extra step from all of that knowledge and skills about the school district and the community. And
Also, too, I graduated from Franklin Elementary
That's
School.
right, and you're a community
Mark
member.
Twain.
Yes.
Modesto High School.
Yes.
And I went to
Right on.
Overwright, too. So.
Yes, and grew up here. So that's like the best part. So thank you for reminding me of that. I think it's a great opportunity for our students to see this grow and to see what where we can go from here. I wanted to ask a question about the advisors because when I was on the LEC board, the Latino Emergency Council board, that was when we talked about doing HYLCs, it was really difficult to get advisors. And so I wasn't sure if there's more available now because I'm believing you need an advisor at each school. Is that, or unless that's changed? Okay, that's true. So how, you're just going to go talk to them and see if somebody's willing to take the extra time to do that? Is that how we're going to get them? I just didn't know how you're going to, since it's been such a struggle. I'm looking
Yes,
forward
yeah.
to it.
So that is the main thing. At the beginning of the school year, we'll work with the principals and admin to see which advisors are currently interested in it. But we do have the stipends that were currently approved a couple years ago for the BSU and HYLC advisors. So that's our other incentive currently at the moment.
Okay, good, because I knew that. Thank you. I'd forgotten about that.
So this whole last month, John Torres, who's here, has been going to each one of the campuses, as many as we can get, and beginning to talk to principals and also the advisors that are already there.
Okay.
You all know that your advisors are all tired, especially the good ones. They have
Right.
3 or 4 clubs that they're monitoring. So they've given us some ideas on how you could help them and also some things that we can do too. So, but yes, a great advisor makes a difference in a club, and they are, I don't want to say they're few, we just have to find them and then cultivate them.
Okay, that's great. Because that was my, this sounds great, but I know we need an advisor at every campus, so that's wonderful. Thank you for reminding me about the stipend. Those are all my questions.
Trustee Mejia, were you up?
Yes, I think I was.
Somehow it jumped to Lopez, but I know your name was there.
Oh,
Go ahead.
I'll skip Lopez since I'm a little bit older. So I just want to say, well, thank you for your presentation. But first, most of all, I was in HYLC, and I think you don't know how much an impact you start planting seeds early on and leadership. I think there's so many students. We're not gonna get them all, but the ones that we do get, we're gonna really appreciate it. And I know of the reputation, and the organization has other leadership programs that they also do. So hopefully, as students grow and find potential, they also go into those other Latino initiatives that you have going on. So that's at least where I think that hopefully grows into. So it just gets me excited, the opportunity to engage more students because we have such a large population and we need as many clubs as possible to engage because we have so many students. So I just appreciate it. Thank you for your leadership. And I look forward to just kind of hearing the expansion in the coming years. So thank you so much for you and your team.
And Trustee Lopez?
Well, thank you. Thank you for the presentation. You know, it was mentioned earlier, you know, what kind of students are being fostered through these programs. As Trustee Mejia mentioned, he was a HYLC member. I was too. My path through school and how I came to realize that higher education was going to be something important to me was through, and not completely, but a major part through HYLC. And I was able to be exposed to different things that I wasn't around before. So, and just as a group of individuals that were in my group, I was thinking at the top of my head, we now have doctors, we now have business owners, we have teachers that work for our district, we have pilots. We have folks that work, students, former students that work in private and public sector. So that's the work. And I know I'm missing the greatness of the other individuals that I can't think of off the top of my head, but and we knew one of the major things, as Trustee Marks mentioned, was the influence of a strong advisor, and because we can pinpoint to that fostering relationship of our advisor as the key to making the success of HOLC. And so I think for me, that was going to be one of my questions is we're in a very unique opportunity where public sector nonprofit work is meeting with the school district, which is one of the things that I've always mentioned. A lot of times I see the growth that we've done with Center for Human Services and many other nonprofit organizations, and it's sometimes we got to rely on our allies outside to really make work on the student as a whole. And so I'm very excited for this opportunity. But one of the things is also one of the things that I always look at is how even with having the support of the district, are we still creating what in essence I think HLC has been big on, grassroots, because it's been able to take care, is able to stay around for many years because of the great work of some of the grassroots individuals in our community. And so as we move forward in this, what is the key part for you all to still foster that natural and grassroots mentality that has really been an essence of HLC?
Well, first of all, we haven't got there yet. We just started. But you all, if you know who I am, community capacity building is what we are about. And we want to increase the ability of these men and women, these boys and girls on their campuses to most impact those that are around them on their campuses. So that'll be the first thing. The other thing is that there's tremendous support in the community for these young people. But because of COVID, and because of just over the last few years before COVID, they just needed some strengthening in their in the adult leadership. That's not negative at all. It's just how things happen. And so we've got to now catch up with connecting with the community. We are quite aware of the community are just waiting for us to blow the trumpet on how they can support and how they can help. So we do agree that we do agree that it's the community that should be leading the way on this and not the school district. So even though we are grateful for you and we do want you to continue to be a part, and we will be a part together because we want to continue to align our efforts and our measurables with you all. On the other hand, it's going to be the community that's going to drive this thing and make it great. So did I answer your question?
Perfectly.
Okay.
Thank you.
Great. You've heard a lot of great comments and input and questions. And I just want to express gratitude. I think you've heard support from every one of us that's spoken. And I want to just recognize the energy and enthusiasm and the spirit of City Ministry Network, and know that you've got our confidence to help us reach our children, help them find their potential, and train them to be great leaders. And Marvin, you have the ability to teach these kids how to graduate and come back and serve here. So we want to make sure that that's part of the focus. We need them all to come back and be great leaders to others and keep the movement alive and growing.
Right, and I do want to encourage you too, Chad. I'm grateful for your kind words. On the other hand, all of us, whether it's education, community, it's all mutual support and encouragement. And the days of the silos and sectors, those days are gone. We've got to figure out how to work together, trust each other, have safe, candid conversations, and make this great for our kids. So thank you, but I also want to come back to you and say we're going to continue to work together on this. So.
We love that. Thank you.
Can I motion?
Actually, this is a report, and we don't get to do it tonight. Is it up for approval? Well, I don't have that on my... okay, we have a motion and a second. All those in favor? Okay.
So-
Do we have any opposition? I only heard ayes. That's unanimous. Thank you. And I'm sorry that I missed that word in the agenda. So next, we have item B4, and this is a report and approval of the 2023-24 curriculum adoptions. Mr. Calderon, thank you for enduring 2 board meetings to do this.
Problem. So, good evening, Board President Brown, trustees, Superintendent Noguchi, cabinet, and members of the public. My name is Ernesto Calderon, Senior Director, CIPD, and I'm here tonight to present on the curriculum recommendations and for adoption for the 23-24 school year in the areas of AP English Literature and Composition, IB English Literature A for Diploma, and World Language French. This presentation most closely aligns to District Goal 1, increase academic achievement, and ensure equitable access to all students to attain college and career readiness. So let me tell you a little bit about the adoption process. Over the past 8 months, teacher committees have met to analyze standards, review publisher options, and ultimately made recommendations for their content area. We also held a public preview in the CIPD office of all recommendations from April 3rd through April 14th for anyone interested in reviewing these proposed materials. First off, in the area of English, we are looking to renew for a new curriculum in AP Literature and Composition. The recommendation is to move forward with Literature and Composition, Essential Voices, Essential Skills for the AP course as a main text. The text is published by Bedford Publishing. The text will be accompanied by the Norton Guide for AP Literature, Writing and Skills as a Student Handbook, published by Norton Publishing. Both are the 2022 editions and are available through print and through the digital platform. I'd like to take a moment to thank the teachers who served on this adoption committee, as well as our CIPD instructional coach, Amy Phillips, and our ELA coordinator, Rachel Hallenstein. As part of this adoption, the scholars will receive both physical and digital books. They will also receive AP prep materials and access to the interactive student platform. This adoption is for a 7-year contract, and the fiscal impact is approximately $55,830. The next curriculum up for adoption is our IB English Literature A for Diploma course. The recommendation is to move forward with IB English A Literature for the IB Diploma by Pearson Publisher. This is a 2020 edition and will be offered in print and as an ebook. I'd also like to thank the small yet mighty committee for their contribution to this process. Only one teacher teaches this course, by the way. IB students enrolled in this course will receive digital and physical books for each student along with the IB prep materials. This is an ongoing contract with no minimum adoption period, and the fiscal impact is approximately $5,577. So finally, we have the recommendation for a world language French course in our district. We are recommending to move forward with Camen's French for the Connected World levels 1 through 4. These texts are published through Vista Higher Learning 2023 edition, and each scholar will receive a text in print along with access to the digital platform. Again, a small yet mighty committee for this adoption. We do only offer French at 3 of our comprehensive sites, and each one was represented in this committee. I'd like to thank each teacher for their time, along with ELA coordinator Rachel Hallenstein, who facilitated all of the meetings. Scholars enrolled in this course will receive digital and physical books for each student, along with access to the interactive student platform. This adoption is for a 5-year contract, and the fiscal impact is approximately $58,326. For all of the curriculum that I presented here this evening for recommendation, the approximate cost will be based on actual enrollment numbers. As of right now, it is only based on projected enrollment. The total cost comes to approximately $119,733. So next steps tonight, I am seeking approval for the proposed curriculum adoptions for the 23-24 school year. Once approved, we will move forward with placing these curriculum orders in July 1st. And I'm available for any questions you may have.
Do we have any comments from the public on this agenda item? Seeing none, any questions or comments from the board? Do we have a motion? Oh, I didn't clear the queue from previous. Was there new? Oh, sorry, okay. I didn't hear anybody, so I was going to say, let's move on. Trustee Maestas.
Just trying to follow, put it in the queue. So AP courses go into a redesign cycle every set of years. Do we know when the cycle is for AP Literature and Composition? This is a 7-year contract. Excuse me, this is a 7-year contract, and I would hate to be locked into a 7-year contract if a redesign happened in between that time.
So we do keep track of when those rewrites are for content. A lot of times the content isn't enough to justify a complete a new curriculum adoption. They might, particularly in English, they might just address a different emphasis in a different area, but the 7-year contract is pretty standard for all of our curriculum. And it's not that it's $55,000 every year, it's $55,000 one time.
Yeah.
And that 7-year gives us access to the digital curriculum for that time. So that's pretty standard on what we would do. But if there is a major rewrite, it usually takes the publishers a year or two to kind of get back up to that. So this would make sure we'd cover through that cycle.
Okay, all right, that's it, thanks.
Trustee Mark?
Yes, I appreciate this, and I love that there's hard copies for students, because I've had students and parents want a hard copy. And so I'm really glad that we took the initiative to do that. Because I know when we went to digital, people were really upset, and so I was like, okay, let's do both. And then the other thing is, I wanted to know, I appreciate that we're doing French. What other world languages are we doing? And have we ever considered doing Mandarin? Because of we just have a lot of opportunities in California with Mandarin. So I just was wondering if we'd ever thought about that.
Yeah, so we do offer other languages in our district. This French is the one that's up for adoption. Actually, French was actually adopted a couple of years ago.
Yeah.
The difference is that the course had to be rewritten, or the textbook had to be rewritten, because it was written at a college level, and it was very difficult for scholars to access it, especially in freshman year. So the curriculum developers actually rewrote the text in order to make it more accessible for scholars in 9th to 12th grade. So that's why the adoption came forward again.
Oh, that's great. Because I know we had German at one point in our district, but we didn't have enough students for that. So I didn't know what other languages we were doing besides the biliteracy one, and which I think is awesome, our seal of biliteracy in Spanish. So that was really cool. But I just didn't know if we had other ones. So I was just suggesting it since we had it on the agenda tonight, and I was like, okay, I can talk about it here, but can't talk about it in any other time. So thank you.
All right, Trustee Daily.
First of all, thank you for coming back for a second meeting. Really appreciate it.
Problem.
My question's actually kind of more in general surrounding the comment that Trustee Marks talked about, is I did see the mention in here that students have access to both the digital and the print copy. Is that typical? Because I'm hearing from parents that they don't have access to a print copy.
So almost every one of our new adoptions, as we go through it, we look for a digital and a print copy. There would be one exception for our current English adoption. StudySync, it is only a digital platform. That adoption is up for next year. We'll come back with an approval next year for what the teachers would like to recommend for that one.
Thank you.
All right, thank you.
So you'll see me again next year.
Good, so we've heard comments. Do I hear a motion for approval of this agenda item? Motion by Trustee Mejia. Second by Trustee Daily. All those in favor? Aye. Motion carries.
Thank you.
And next, we have a public hearing and approval of the Modesto City Schools Special Education Local Plan, Annual Service and Budget Plans. for 2023-24. Speaker is Christina Romero.
Good evening. Good evening, President Brown, Board of Trustees, Dr. Noguchi, Cabinet, and members of the public. My name is Christina Romero, and I'm the Senior Director of the SELPA, overseeing the elementary portion of our SELPA here in Modesto City Schools. And tonight I'm going to be providing you with a report on the Special Education Local Plan, as well as the annual budget and services plans. My counterpart, Dr. Christy Allen, is not with us here tonight, but I can guarantee you she's watching us on live stream. So, hi, Christy. The purpose of tonight's presentation is threefold. First, this report is going to provide the board with a background regarding the local plan and the annual budget and service plans. Second, tonight's meeting will fulfill the requirement of holding a public hearing for these documents. And at the conclusion of this presentation, I will ask and request your approval on all three. Oh, I didn't change any of these, did I? Sorry about that, you guys. I apologize. There we go, all caught up. The local plan, as well as the annual service and budget plans, align to District Goals 1.6, which is increasing access to general education for students with disabilities, and Goal 3, which is providing a safe, welcoming, and respectful learning environment for each member of our school community, while ensuring effective district-wide communication for students, staff, families, and our community partners. Federal law requires that each special education local plan area, or SELPA, ensures a continuum of program options for our students that are available to meet a variety of diverse needs for special education, but also through related services. In 1977, all California school districts and county offices were mandated to form consortiums in geographical regions to provide special education service needs of children residing within our region boundaries. Each region was then identified as a SELPA and was required to develop a local plan describing how it provides special education and related services. Although we are technically two districts with one governing board, Modesto City Schools is considered its own region and is identified as a single district SELPA. To put this into context, Stanislaus County SELPA, which is our neighboring SELPA, is a multi-district SELPA consisting of 23 districts with one superintendent's council that oversees them. The local plan is required to be submitted each year to CDE for approval to ensure that we are providing all the required assurances of access to special education and related services, as well as to ensure compliance to all federal and state requirements. And actually, in addition, in this year's budget proposal, there is a change recommended that all adopted local plans will be posted on the CDE website to ensure transparency for the public. So that will be new this year. The plan is outlined in Ed Code and is required to contain 3 prongs: the local agreements, governance and administration, as well as the annual plans, which include our interagency agreements. In 2020, Assembly Bill AB 1808 added language to the Ed Code that required the development and use of a formal CDE adopted template, which is made up of 5 sections listed here, as well as the additional sections for attachments. The state superintendent also established and determined guidelines for the development of that plan, the submission of that plan, and included the current timelines that we are now under. As part of the review process, a committee consisting of special education administration, teachers, itinerant staff, general education, administration, and our CAC chairperson, which is our community advisory committee, who is also the parent of a student with a disability, met to discuss this plan. The committee reviewed existing board policies, our current local plan, each section of the special education handbook to ensure that each meet the requirements as outlined in our Ed Code, and then the committee approved these sections of the local plan. After the local plan committee approved the plan, SELPA leadership, in conjunction with our CAC chairperson, Mr. Palmore, presented the local plan in draft form to our community advisory committee. This is made up of parents, staff, and community agencies, including our local regional center. The CAC membership was provided 30 days to review the plan and make any recommendations for updates. Now that those processes have each been complete, we are presenting the completed plan this evening to the Board of Education and Dr. Noguchi with the request for approval. If approved, we will then proceed in requesting the county superintendent's approval so that we are able to meet our June 30th CDE submission deadline. So the annual budget plan. When the CDE updated the forms for the local plan, they included a section for our annual budget and service plan. All SELPAs are required to review and submit this plan annually to CDE after it is adopted through a public hearing. Each plan ensures that all students with disabilities within Modesto City Schools have access to services and instruction appropriate to meet their unique needs as determined through their individualized education program or their IEP. The budget plan, which begins in Section D, page 1, identifies expected revenues and expenditures for the special education programs in our specific goals and functions requested by the CDE. The revenue includes federal IDEA funding, state dollars, and our local property taxes. The annual service plan, which you can find located in Section E on page 1, consists of descriptions of all of the services that we provide to students with disabilities based on the state-recognized codes. And it is a snapshot of the document that indicates the physical location that we provide those services to students per our current data. So you can literally look and indicate what services are provided at what school sites all throughout the district. So the next step in presenting this to you is to conduct this as a public hearing. So we are requesting your approval of the local plan as well as your approval of the 23-24 annual budget and service plan after that occurs.
Okay, we will now close the regular board meeting, and we will open the public hearing on the agenda item, public hearing and approval of the Modesto City Schools Special Education Local Plan Annual Service and Budget Plans for 2023-24. So the public hearing is now open. Are there any comments from the public on this agenda item? Ms. Martinez.
Debbie Martinez, We Are La Raza Parents Union. I work a lot with our SALPA department. I'm even in the juvenile hall, has been there for 8 years. SALPA department for MCS is a mess over there. I have to help clean up those little kids' IEPs, but we get through it. What I noticed here, not just here in this district, but I like to see the gap closed. And what it is our autism children that are capable and able to go into the general ed classes. They go in, but they go in with autism, which means they have their behavioral issues, which means they take away from the general ed children the teacher who has no para, no aid, no assistance for these autism children. They end up in the intervention room that Aaron's talking about. I've gone to these elementary schools, and I've seen these little children sitting in front of the VP's office. That's their intervention, because I've asked, why is he still there? Oh, he got in trouble. So that's their intervention for these autism children. There was one where I was even going to go to the IEP meeting, and he was sitting outside of his class time, which was GE. We ended up helping that teacher because I plainly asked her, do you need help in your class? She said yes, a general ed teacher who is not set up to have instructions for an autism child's behavior with no assistance only sets up our children for failure. If you're gonna pass money for this SALPA department, we'd like, on behalf of community and the parents, to see that they have assistance, these general ed teachers. I'm speaking for them now. Bless you, Chad. They need help. If you're gonna force our autism children to go into these general ed classes with their behavioral issues, give general ed teachers the assistance in moderating their class time and not kicking these autism children out of their class time. It is not fair for them. Service them as needed. Close those gaps for these children and help the teachers keep them in the class time. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other comments from the public on this item?
The optics in, I'm Aaron Anguiano, Latino Community Roundtable. The opinion in the community is more like Modesto City Schools doesn't like to provide services to children of special ed. That it's really difficult to request services and get them provided. First, you start with requesting an assessment that sometimes is denied. And then you go on and then until you finally, some teacher says, yeah, you're right, okay, let's do an assessment. And then not all the assessments are done, and then it's delays, and it's like, splitting hairs and fighting like this. That's the impression I have from the community. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments from the public?
Chairman, members of the committee. I will suggest you to deny the approval of this proposal. And the reason being is because I would like Mr. I forgot your name. Herbs. Explain to you the document that I show you. And actually, the programs that are presented today, to give you an example, in those committees in which I was participating, your administrator is supposed to receive information from us as a parents. Then what I find out is that there's no, in the junior high where I am, where my child is, there's no committee. This committee is inside the English Learners Committee. In the agenda, this issue never is speak out. Then I don't know what recommendations are coming from. That's why I'm very unclear then when they say a committee. When I review the information, who's in those committees, most of those people are staff, then administrators, or I don't know, but I want to see how many how many parents really with needs are in those committees suggesting programs and services. It's the years when I meet you, this is when I ask you, looks like we are invited to these sessions. We're really invited, but we're not welcoming. You guys don't welcome us. You don't listen to us. Then when I review the budgets, when I see the programs, that's what I repeat. My son is going to junior high. With the failure that I'm presenting to you is what I'm gonna expect him to receive in high school, when he's gonna be thousands of students now. When I had the controversy with Ms. Romero several times, what my family decide is to hire. We hire and we pay $300 per month. We, family, because we do not receive this service per month for a tutor, and also for a psychologist, because my child was put in a situation that probably she knows. I told her about it. That's why I don't want to be fighting with your administrators. But if the situation, that's why I presented the legislation. Legislation is already there. If you guys want us to go into the legislation, then we have to hire lawyers, because you're not listening to us. Then I'm requesting not to approve this until a revision of what is the needs, because there's frustration in parents.
Thank you. Do we have any other comments from the public for this public hearing? Right, we will now close the public hearing. And I'm looking for a motion for approval. Comments from the board? Okay, thank you.
Okay. So I wanted to ask a question. I had this question before Mr. Alvarez came to the microphone. So I wanted to know more about the parent committee, because in it, and as I read through some of this, is a really long document to read through.
Incredibly long.
It's really long. Like if you see my binder, it's like 3/4 of my binder. But on chapter 1 in the SOPA office, here's what it says. It says, the board shall adopt a district curriculum that reflects district philosophy, responds to student needs and abilities, and is consistent with the requirements of law. Insofar as possible, this curriculum shall also reflect the desires of the community and the needs of society as a whole, which is great. I mean, that's like the introduction statement. That's what our responsibility is as a board. So then it says, 2 paragraphs down, it says, "The superintendent or designee shall establish procedures that ensure the curriculum development and evaluation process includes input from teachers, administrators, students, and parents or guardians from all grade levels, disciplines, schools, special programs, and categories of students," which is like, that's a big list. So then when I just wanted to know, how are we including that list of the students, parents, we already have teachers and administrators on it, and in all the grade levels and at all the school sites? Because when I looked up the committee, I said, oh, I didn't see that in that. So I was
That's
just
an
looking for it.
incredibly multifaceted question. So let me start with the basics.
Okay.
Our students with disabilities are general education students first. So our families' participation in the curriculum adoption process that Ernesto outlined for
Okay.
general education is symbiotic with that. In addition to that, the committee that's being referred to with regard to the adoption of the local plan is the Community Advisory Committee. It's not located at each site. It's a district-wide committee that all of our families of students with disabilities who are notified monthly. We meet right here in this room on a monthly basis, and we provide 4 parent trainings in addition to that a year. It is made up of any family member or community member who wants to attend, who attends 2 meetings and would like to become a member. It is chaired by Emmanuel Palmore, who is a parent of a student with a disability, and we have 6 other sitting members that are not administrators. In fact, the CAC guidelines require that over half of the membership be family members of students with disabilities and community members. So Regional Center is represented, Aspiranet is represented, and like I indicated, families. So the only folks that sit on this committee that have voting rights that are representative of the district are myself and Christy Allen. Everyone else is an additional member outside of the school system.
Okay, that's helpful to know, because I was looking for that, because I know we're trying to reach out to parents, we're trying to get input from parents, and we have a parent here, a couple of parents here.
Right.
Just saying, hey, we want to be listened to, how can we be listened to? And a committee is a great place, because it opens up a door to have those discussions and say, I'm having struggles with this. How about you? What's happening? So parents can dialogue together and with staff and then find a solution to the problems that are happening.
Right, and the outline doesn't indicate the exact curriculum we use because
Right.
we're held to the same standard as everyone else, indicating that our curriculum is aligned with state standards and that our students have access to all of that in general education, but through our programming as well.
Yeah. Okay, thank you. That was very helpful. Thank you for that input.
President Brown, point of information. Can you repeat that first part where you were mentioning that our special education students are general education students? How does that play into the conversation about the parents that are in that committee? Because it made it sound like general education parents could be making decisions for special ed education.
So I will tell you, at present time, we don't have any members that participate other than our community member advisory components, like our interagencies, that are parents of general education students. All of the parents who are participatory in our CAC committee are parents of students with special needs in our district.
Okay, thank you for that clarification.
Of course.
Thank you.
Okay. Trustee Daily, you had to comment?
I do have a comment, because I think that we're seeing over the course of the last, 10, 15 years, a lot more students, a lot more kids really that are developing special needs, and things are being identified differently. The spectrum for things are changing. What are we offering to keep those kids in the general ed classrooms rather than pulling them out? What are we offering to both the students and the staff?
So it depends upon, obviously, student needs. I don't like to speak in generalities in special education, because the whole point is that each student has an individualized plan that is written by their team to meet their needs. However, systemically, things that we have in place are, we do have specialized autism programming, which we call highly structured, which Deb referred to earlier. Our students in those classroom environments are receiving discrete child training at our youngest ages, pivotal response training, and then we're switching to more effective design that we see in our general education classes as well, just with higher levels of repetition. When they do enter the general education classroom, they typically, if they are a student who needs support, do have a paraprofessional to support them or an inclusion specialist, depending on their needs. We We have a wide variety. We provide everything from designated instructional support services, which are individual, maybe pull out or push in either speech and language, occupational therapy, vision instruction for students who are blind or visually impaired. We have deaf and hard of hearing interpreter services and supports. We have supports for radiums and cochlear implants. We have Roger mics, so for students that might need them. We also have push-in services for students who have more mild to moderate needs. So it could be curricular support, a lot of modification and assistance with our teachers. The high school and secondary levels are working on co-teaching next year, running pilots where a general education teacher is paired with a special educator to really work on how do we modify and adapt and accommodate curriculum so that students of all diverse needs have access to it. So those are just a few. I know that document is really big, but I think I kind of summarized most of it.
Are we actually seeing an increase in students with special needs?
We have an
And-
increase in the number of students that are being identified with more severe disabilities than less severe disabilities, which is a big change from years ago. So that's been a challenge for us to kind of wrap our hands around. It's just not been the same. The other difference that's changed, which I'm sure many of you know, is that the DSM criteria, or how students are identified outside of the school system, doesn't align any longer with the EdCode criteria of how they're identified within the school system. So we have a bit of a discrepancy in dealing with some of our counter agencies and counterparts in students transitioning into school age programming.
Okay, so how are we going to rectify that?
Well, we
this
do.
year?
Well, they're just two different criteria. So we work really
Right.
closely with the regional center, as well as we provide our own infant services. I'm not sure how many of you are aware of that, but we do provide our own infant services as well.
So is that because the DSM-4, the ed code hasn't, right, DSM-5 is the current one?
One is medical and one is educational. So we don't use the DSM-5 here because that's a medical criteria, and educational criteria ed code doesn't match. They're not the same.
Would that be you that I would talk to more about that?
Yeah, I can give you more specifics.
I would appreciate that.
Sure.
All right, Vice President Irvin.
I just wanted to go back. You said for the hearing, said you had the cochlear implants, and there was something else you mentioned too.
Oh, just services. We have a DHH itinerant provider who, for some of our students, they don't need services or supports from a person. They're completely able to access everything that's going on in our AP classes, general education classes alike. They just need some sense of amplification in every classroom that they're in. So our teachers wear what's called a Roger mic, and I'm sure some of you are familiar with that, so that they can set it to the receivers that our students have in their implants, and they can hear everything that's going on without the amplification of everything else in the classroom.
Okay, so there's another implant besides cochlear?
No, the Roger mic is an external device that amplifies for the student with the cochlear.
All right. So I apologize that I had inadvertently closed the public hearing. Now that we have had comments from the board, it's appropriate to close the public hearing. So this is the official closing. So we've already heard from the public. We've now heard from the board. And we're closing the public hearing. I'm now looking for a motion. We have a motion from Trustee Daily to approve the Modesto City Schools Special Education Local Plan, Annual Service and Budget Plans for 2023 and 24. Do we have a second? Second by Trustee Irvin. Those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? So the motion carries. And I have a request for a 5-minute break. So let's take a few minutes and we'll be back. All right, we're back, and we'll move on to item B6. This is a public hearing, review of draft local control and accountability plan, the LCAP. So this is Mr. Hurst.
Okay, let's try that. Should I do it again, or? So, good evening, President Brown, Board of Trustees, Superintendent Noguchi, Cabinet, and Public. My name is Steve Hurst, Senior Director of State and Federal Programs, and I'm here to present the 23-24 LCAP Control and Accountability Plan, otherwise Local Control and Accountability, known as the LCAP. So purpose of today's presentation is to review the development of the LCAP, how it aligns with our Modesto City School strategic goals, the draft of the current LCAP, and to review the next steps following tonight. So Education Code does mandate that the school district hold a public hearing prior to the approval of the LCAP. The LCAP is a 3-year plan that describes the goals, actions, services, and also the expenditures, which I will not present tonight because those will be presented by Mr. Zierli in his presentation, and the final numbers will be presented at approval. And it must address the positive student outcomes and local priorities as well as the state priorities. Every year, the plan is reviewed and revised as needed. So the way to think of the LCAP is it's the plan that links all of the district's initiative together, regardless of the funding source. And on the slide there, you can see a lot of different funding sources. This is not all of them. But the idea is that we want to make sure that everything is in alignment, has a common purpose and a common goal, which is obviously the achievement of our students and making them productive members of society. So the original 3-year LCAP is the 21 through 24 LCAP that we are in. This is currently year 2. We are looking at year 3 with the 23-24. And we've had over 30 meetings this year. Also, we've conducted some surveys. There's a variety of educational partners that were involved in this. I'll highlight that here in a little bit. And one of the things to highlight is at the end of each meeting, we do a feedback survey from our participants. And this year, based on that feedback, we feel that shows that their thoughts and their input was valid based on what they said, with over 98% of the participants indicating that is how they felt about the process. So the slide shows you right here is all of the different educational partners, and they're not all there, but on the right-hand side, there's a large number of educational partners that we do deal with. One of the big things, obviously, we want to do is making sure that in addition to getting input from our administrators and our teachers, we're getting input from our parents and from our students. Highlighting some of the things we've done this year to increase our parent input and participation is there are more members on the LCAP Advisory Committee that are parents this year. We also worked with our Parent Engagement and Outreach Office on what they call Parents Making a Difference. And the topics they talked about were definitely LCAP related. We held 2 special meetings on the southwest side, one at Bret Harte and one at Mark Twain, specifically for the parents to get information on the LCAP and to provide direct input on the process, what's working, what do we need to do better, and what ideas they had. It's the same questions we tend to ask in almost all of our meetings about things. Additional to that, we also did outreach with our students this year. I went out to every single junior high and high school, as well as multiple elementary and special education, again, asking those same questions of those students to get their direct input so that we have a good idea of how they're feeling about what we're doing, as well as where do we have opportunities to potentially improve the process. Additional to that, we do our parent surveys and our student surveys. We're seeing those numbers slightly increased with the parents and about the same number participating from the students, separate from the meetings that were held. The LCAP process is a year-long process. It starts early. If you look back, we start literally getting new members, and we have returning members. We start that in August, September. We go throughout the entire year, and we come up now to June where we have the public hearing and ultimately the impact or approval from the board. So it's not as a simple process to just add something anytime you want, because it does need to go through multiple groups and discussions to make sure that it really fits with what we're trying to do, and also that the funding is available to meet that. As far as our district goal alignment, the LCAP does include all 5 of our district strategic goals. We started that with the 21-24 LCAP. As we revise those district goals as we start this next year, then we would align the new 24-27 LCAP to those goals when they get realigned. LCAP Goal 1 specifically is about academic achievement, equitable access, and college and career readiness. Underneath it, there are 6 subpoints or 6 strategies. Each of our actions and services then is aligned to those 6 strategies, and I'll go into that here in the next few slides. So LCAP Goal 1 is our largest goal in the entire LCAP. It is a focus on students. There are 3 slides here highlighting some of the actions and services that we are funding through the LCAP and the actions that we do. I would point out that one of the new services that we're looking at this year for the next LCAP is supporting of our team teaching of algebra. We piloted that program this year, are seeing positive results from that program, and need to expand it past the pilot to multiple sites. We know that algebra is a gateway course. More students that can pass algebra have that much better chance of actually graduating on time. Additional to that, we have professional development highlighted there for our English language learners, making sure that we continue to focus on that. Transitional kindergarten, full-day kindergarten, obviously has been a big push in California for transitional. We continue to grow that program. As I mentioned earlier, we have, I think, 100 graduates from adult education. We're seeing more and more need in the adult education, so recognizing that, we're expanding what we're doing as far as the services and support within the LCAP to support our adult education. Big call out from all parties has been mental health supports, making sure that we maintain, can we increase that? So we're continuing to expand our mental health supports, not only for our students, but also for our staff where we can. Helping support our students needing to take AP test, IB test, PSATs, especially our students of lower socioeconomic status. We continue to support that. The entire English learner services is supported through the LCAP. We have bilingual language development specialists. We have support for our newcomers. We continue to expand upon remediation. Obviously, we're recovering from the pandemic. There's been a huge need for remediation support, as well as enrichment, making sure that we expand that. Esports was added this last year. We've been able to expand that this year across not only the high school and junior highs, but down into the elementary. And thinking of some of those most neediest students, our foster and homeless, making sure that we have those liaisons and supports for them. Going on to Goal 2. Goal 2 is really focused on our high-quality professional development. Again, there are 3 strategies underneath that, one of them being the MCS character traits that has been a call-out from the board for many years now, and making sure that we continue to do that. And it also helps us focus on what we call the instructional core, which is really, are we providing the supports to our teachers so that they can provide the lessons that they need to support in the classroom. How do we do this? Obviously, we have instructional coaches that support our teachers in the classroom, working hand in hand with them, also working in CIPD, which is completely funded out of the LCAP. So that entire division, which has been of huge support to all of us, definitely comes into play. We support our equity professional development. We're working in partnership with Epic Education on that. And we want to make sure that we're growing our people, making sure that we have leaders coming from within our districts that continue to lead our district as we move forward. Goal number 3 is focused on our safe, welcoming, and respectful environment, and also recognizes that we've had an increased need for technology. There are 5 strategies there. Within those strategies, we have focus on making sure we keep our schools safe. Parent involvement and engagement. If you think about TC2 translators, typist clerk translators at every site. The parent ambassador programs, which was kicked off a year ago, we've seen that really be able to reach out to our parents and provide great service to them. We have community aids. We have the infrastructure through our technology department, technology supports. All of those are actions that are supporting how are we supporting our families and our students. Goal number 4 is really about fiscal practices and operational sound operational practices. Everything there really is about how do we spend our money, make sure that we have fiscal oversight. It includes the LCAP oversight. When we think about maintaining our schools, that involves LCAP. That also includes the bond measures that we've put in place and the expansions that we've been able to do there. And our supporting green initiatives like the sustainable outdoor learning environments or the SOL learning environments. Goal 5, as we know, it takes people to run a district the size that we have. We need to make sure that we have high-quality staff, whether that's certificated, administrative, or classified. And this is really focused on that with the strategies that we have there. Within this, we are supporting how we retain and recruit staff and supporting a new program for employee wellness. We know that to keep our employees, we need to provide services to them. In addition to that is we've increased our HR staff. We need more people, and we've improved efficiency of processes. Thank you. So just some of the highlights, and then again, this is not everything, but these are some of the highlights of the plan is we've had expansion to our MTSS at our elementary. We're looking at expansion into the high schools and junior highs, the continuation of full-day kinder and TK, the before and after school opportunities, not only at the elementary, but also at the junior high and high schools, especially with the time change that we've seen. Newcomer and EL supports, we know we need to focus on those students and their families. Equity training and the parent ambassadors, I could go on and probably name a lot of them, but these are things that we've seen have benefit and have been the feedback that we've had from our parents and our students, that these are things that they've seen benefit to them. Anytime you have benefits, there's still focus areas and opportunities. Academic achievement, we are seeing some rebound from the pandemic, but we are still not back to pre-pandemic levels. Attendance has been a statewide concern, chronic absenteeism, we see that same. We've seen student behaviors be affected. And obviously the challenge you have is as you're adding people, you have to find the right people to be able to staff and meet the needs of your students and your families. Highlighting some of the additions this year, there are 3 that we've proposed to add, which is the team teaching for algebra, the increased supports for adult education, and the employee wellness. Down below there, I've shown you some of the additions that were put in this last year. If you think about some of the counseling supports, making sure students were back on, we increased athletics and enrichment activities. And those would be proposed to continue on as we continue this next LCAP. So what we're looking to do is maintain all of the current goals and actions within the LCAP with the noted additions. We want to maintain and increase specifically mental health supports. That was a call out that was definitely highlighted in multiple meetings. Enrichment and remediation need to continue to be a focus, and we need to really focus on our staff development with regards to English language development and the instructional core. So with that, our next steps would be to, after the public input, would be to bring it back to the board for approval in the June 20th meeting. Once that's approved by the board, we do have to submit it to the County Office of Education for their review and approval. And at that point, the plan would be accepted, and we would then implement the plan as of July 1 for the 23-24 school year. And at this point, open it up to public comment.
So it's now important that we open a public hearing for this item. So I'm going to close the regular meeting and we'll open a public hearing for this agenda item, review of the local draft local control and accountability plan, or the LCAP. So public hearing is now open. Are there comments from the public on this agenda item? Ms. Martinez.
Debbie Martinez, I represent community. I represent 5 different governing boards within this community. I've been with the LCAP since it first began. I remember when we first started our first one over at La Loma about 11 years ago. I've been with the LCAP from the beginning. It's like watching wet paint dry in Alaska, spending our money. So here it is. You just reported out right now, and it was music to my ears, the parent ambassador. It's benefiting them. So that's why I do what I do. I am a voice for the voiceless. A lot of educators don't like me. Even board members don't accept me. Districts tolerate me, but yet here we are. We are La Raza Parents Union. Without our voice, without Advocate for Justice, without the Latino Community Roundtable, without California School Choice, we wouldn't have PBIS on the books right now. We wouldn't have the school to prison pipeline that you guys are trying to clean up. We wouldn't have where Mr. Adolfo, about maybe several months ago when we were at a community meeting, he proudly said, we now have an EL department. Well, 10 years ago when we started, we should have had one. Ceres has one. We've had one for almost 9 years. We work well with the families out there. I just want that we can work like Ceres, small little district, but yet they're kicking butt out there when it comes to the parents. You say it on print, but when it really, really comes down to the parents, they still get curbside service. So this is what I'm gonna say. When we spend this money, let's start buying neon signs that say to your school sites, enter at your own risk. Because we have employees that can't even keep their pants up, can't even keep their hands off of our little girls. I'm the one that has to peel the layer to the bad behavior of what educators do with our money and how they do not service our disadvantaged population of children. I will continue to voice for the voiceless, to let's put the money where it belongs. Our children deserve equal opportunity. They don't deserve the pipeline. So if we're gonna give money to create pipelines in our elementary schools, I mean, I'm all for Youth for Christ and all these people that want to come on board, but right here, you guys are the ones that are supposed to mandate right here. Then when I get to those school sites trying to clean it all up, oh, they're either distraught employees, their passion for us becomes hostile, and we don't know what we're talking about, but yet tonight we're gonna pass money again for next year, and this year, I was able to save one little boy from Modesto High after I got so much pushback from the SALPA department. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments from the public?
President, Administrator, I hope you don't get bored on me. As mentioned to you at the beginning, I belong to the English Learners Committee in that school. The situation is the following. When the plan is presented, what is in the goal number 1, right, for English learners? When the plan is presented from the administrator and the vice president, most of our opinions are not took into consideration. Most of our opinions are not even in the minutes. That is very interesting. Then how are we gonna be achieving the success of these children? In the last meeting, I requested information. The information was the following. How many students they were certified as proficient in English? For the last 5 years, only 5% of those students passed the test. It means that we're sending from high schools to juniors to the high school. That probably was like 170 students that they will be incompetent as English learners. Then what are we expecting from them? Then it's not difficult to understand that they will be part of the 50% dropouts in the following years. Then what I try you to understand is that you provide resources, you provide funds, but actually what I ask you to each one of you is going to those budgets and see how the money is spent, how much money is in the programs, once again, how much is in the services, how much is in materials, what materials the children are. And the most important of everything, there's no accountability. No one is responsible. You believe that? I don't know where do you guys work. But if you guys don't have accountability, you're fired right away. Right here, in your system that you have, you just will spend. I asked that administrator, what you have been doing and what are you doing different? Let's talk about that next year. What's going on? There's already a program. There's something to be done. I don't know if you guys want to listen, but there's something to be done. Then you can ask me or ask this person, but we're requesting programs, once again, programs and services, please.
Thank you. Other comments from the public? Now, comments or questions from the board? Trustee Marks?
So just to be clear, this is the second year of 3-year LCAP, is that correct?
The third year.
Oh, this is the third year. This is the final year. Okay. For some reason, I heard second, and I don't know. So I was trying to figure it out.
We're currently in our second year. The one before you would be the third year of a 3-year LCAP.
Okay. All right. So we're currently in the second year. Yes. Okay. Thank you. I thought that, and then I thought, oh, did I hear that wrong? And then I just appreciate all of this information. I know it's really complicated. We used to have a placemat here on our table that was like 15 pages thick, and it was because it had so much information in it. But I just wanted to see, I noticed that we had the educational partners, but I wanted to also see how we can incorporate more parents into our LCAP. I know the committee, the advisory committee is 50 members. I don't know how many of those are parents, how many are staff. I don't know what that is. But I just wanted to see if we can, maybe it's just a statement, get more parents involved. Because I feel like it's their students we're educating. So what do they want our schools to look like? And how that was the goal of the government when they set this up. I think it was Jerry Brown. I can't remember exactly which governor it was. But anyway, just to be able to set this up, to make sure that the parents had a voice into what the schools are doing and how we're educating their students. Is that correct?
I can get you a breakdown on all that information.
Okay, good. That'd be awesome. Thank you.
Vice President Irvin.
Yes, and to kind of elaborate on Trustee Marks, I too was part of the first, when they rolled out the LCAP when I was with Aspire. That was part of my job. Went through all that training and stuff. And the focus on parents. And my question would be, like I said, to expand on what Trustee Marks was saying, because I would like to know of those parents, because parents are allowed to make suggestions and things like that. Do we know what changes did we make or revisions did we make that directly came from parents? Is there a way you can pinpoint or tell us, these were input from the parents and we made changes based on their input on this particular item or strategy that goes to what parents give us input on? We know parents are not going to be giving us input on curriculum and things like that, but there are some of the, after school, the social, things and enrichment things that parents can give some valuable input on. Is there a way to capture that and say, what parents here at the school site said, they wanted to see more of this, or they wanted to do this or do that. And so we made adjustments based on their input, so we can truly say we're valuing what parents are saying, or even students, because students are supposed to be a part of the LCAP process as well. And to see, if we can capture that data, so we can be responsible to our community to say, we know how many parents, gave us this input, and these are the changes or revisions we made based on that parent input.
Within the actual state template,
Right.
There's a specific area that we do call out what input
Right.
affected the plan. And so the one on the 20th, you'll actually have the state template versus the reader-friendly version. And within that, you'll actually have the statements specific to call-outs on that.
Right. And then another thing I had heard from some parents at where they were, that they heard there were people who were on the committee who were not parents, but represented that they were parents. Now, is there a way we track to see who's actually parents of students in our district or attending our schools?
Yes, there is. So when we take, input of who wants to participate, one of the things we do is check and see what school they represent, if they have students in the school. So there were 19 parents who signed up to participate this year. Parents participate at various different levels. You got somebody come every meeting to maybe only one meeting. But we do verify, do they have a student enrolled at one of our schools, what grade levels, and use that as part of the representation of the group. We have about 50 members on the committee. It represents students, parents, community members, as well as staff within the district. Various different departments are accounted for that way. We're ahead of the curve compared to what's required from California in that we do have students already on our committee. If the newest proposal goes through the budget, that would be a requirement starting with next year for all districts.
Okay, and then my last question. So I noticed on the LCAP Goal 1 continued, where it talks about advanced placement, international baccalaureate, and the preliminary SAT, AP, IB, PSAT, and support. I didn't see none of that support for or mention of middle college or AVID. And so when you look at those programs, the majority of them are students of color, particularly Latino, and I saw a few, at both the high schools I went to when they announced the AVID, who are all going to universities, and then college, I saw quite a few African Americans and Latino. And so I was wondering, how come they were, the middle college and AVID programs were not mentioned in terms of support or, increasing or, what's going to happen with?
I didn't call them out specifically on this slide. They are included in our LCAP. We have actions for AVID and supporting AVID, as well as the middle college within the LCAP actions and plans. Within 1.2 off the top of my head is where those actions would reside.
Okay, thank you. I'll have.
Trustee Maestas.
Thank you. I'm going to be quick because it's more of a comment than a question. I really appreciate all the highlights of all the things that we've seen gone well, and we're continuing to add those into our LCAP. One thing I guess to think about as we move forward in the coming years, I talked about this a little earlier today about summer school, and just appreciative of all the people that are doing summer school, and that we've expanded things in summer school with enrichment and remediation. And this kind of goes with our team teaching in algebra. We know from lots of research that there's a correlation between the number of Fs that a student gets in their 9th grade year and the probability that they drop out from high school. The higher the Fs, the more likely they are to drop out, and goes into that, the pipeline, right? So my question is there a way that we can, as we move forward, focus on that 9th grade transition year, and how do we build programs in 9th grade specifically to when they're coming in, when they're coming into transition, the PD, all those things that we can get our teachers, our students to have a program that saves our kids before they leave.
We'll let Mr. Godot address some of the things we have there.
So that's actually an area that we have been focused on this current year. We've been working with California Education Partners with a high school and a junior high. We're expanding that next year to include an additional high school and junior high that specifically looks at student success in 8th grade or lack of, and what occurs between the 8th and the 9th grade, and then what happens in 9th grade. And that is a 3-year process that we work with this support group, so to speak, that helps us really analyze what we're currently doing, how successful our students are being or not, and then what steps and actions we can take, and then looking at those actions, studying that, looking at the data and seeing how we can improve. So that is an area that we're focused on currently.
Thank you.
Trustee Lopez.
Thank you very much for the report. I want to echo what my fellow trustees, Marks and Irvin, mentioned about the importance of parent input, and I see the growth, and I appreciate the growth that we've done just in 1 year. As I mentioned a couple months ago, if I'm not mistaken, we're at a point where we can really be transformational about parent engagement and parent input. That is with the next 3 years that we have for the LCAP coming up, and I believe that we can do better than what we're doing, and I believe that we need it needs to start at our elementaries, and it needs to start at our high schools, because I think that when we talk about the advisory committee, it needs to be made up of verified parents that have already been a part of their nucleus at their schools, right? And feeding into a true grassroots from the bottom up of these committees needs to be made up of parents that are already shown that they're invested into their school and their community and their district. But also, we need to make sure that we are working with our parents so that they know how to be transformational about the recommendations they're going to give to us. Because as Trustee Irvin mentioned, we want to see that this was a parent-led goal. This was a parent-led initiative. This was a parent true, like, they knew what they wanted to ask, and that involves training. I know I mentioned last time that there's great organizations throughout the state that work on in a really unbiased way of teaching our parents of how to navigate the LCAP, how can they formulate, from the macro of an ideal world into solid and concrete goals that can lead to change, right? Off the top of my head, I can think of only a couple, but I know that they're out there, right? So I think that we need to work with those individuals or those organizations to really be transformative about what we're doing in the next 6 months with our parents, so that they can actually help us have concrete goals. And so I appreciate the investment we're doing in having parent input and student input. I think that the next step for us is have it be transformational and true representation of our community.
Thank you. Trustee Daily.
Thank you so much for the report. I just want to say, I think I'm extremely impressed with the parent response to the surveys, based on the survey response for both the combination classes and the dress code was significantly less than this. So personally, I'm impressed with that. So question that I have, and I appreciate that the continued focused area are looking at student behaviors. What I would love to see is, because you brought over in goal 3, you talked about mental health. Was it goal 3? No, maybe not goal 3. One of the goals you talked about mental health, and that was kind of across the board. A lot of people were talking about that. And what I would like to see is us to really better understand, as Modesto City Schools, that psychosocial implications of those transitioning grades, and the fact that those student behaviors are really, especially now after COVID, a huge cry for help in some way, shape, or form, not all needing necessarily specialized mental health services, but significant mental health services. I will, however, validate that, at least in Stanislaus County, we don't have enough mental health providers for the population that we have in the county. So I guess it was more of a comment than a question. Thank you.
All right, this is a report, and we're going to go ahead and close the public hearing. Thank you for the report and for all the input that we've received tonight. We now have another public hearing, item B7, public hearing review of the draft 2023-24 budget for all funds. Mr. Zerly.
Thank you, President Brown. Good evening, trustees. Yeah, tonight we have another public hearing to review our proposed budget for all the funds for Modesto City Schools. And as the Associate Superintendent of Business Services, I'm very fortunate to work with a talented financial services team led by Michelle Price and Kim Kamstra. And I can say that confidently because over my 30 years in public education, I've held those positions that they hold, and they do a much better job than I did at budget development. So they began working on the 23-24 budget development in January as the governor released the initial proposals for education funding, and it is culminated by the public hearing that we have here tonight. Purpose of the budget hearing is to discuss how each of these areas contributed to the proposed budget and the dollars and the numbers that you see in front of you tonight. Our budget development, our budget monitoring is directly aligned with strategic goal 4, and that is ensuring that the district is both fiscally and operationally sound. Before you tonight, we have a $550 million proposed general fund budget that meets our current and future year expenditure obligations. The governor's latest May revision is the last statutory step in the state budget process before they have to adopt their spending plan. And until a state budget is approved by the governor and legislature, we use the May revision for revenue assumptions that are included in the proposed budget. Just some brief thoughts on the May revision and the major components of it. Governor Newsom's May revision attempts to reach a balance, protecting existing educational investments while anticipating a continued economic uncertainty. Despite an anticipated $31.5 billion state budget, an 8.22% local control funding formula COLA has been added to our district base rate calculations. In addition, the COLA has been applied to special education, and you can see the base rate for our special needs pupils listed there. And then the first in my history, a COLA has been applied to the transportation funding that we receive as well. Continuing with thoughts on the May revision, it does not propose any funding changes to the Expanded Learning Opportunities Program. However, it does propose a one-year extension to spend our 21-22 allocation by June 30th of 24 instead of June 30th of 23. The governor is not proposing, and you'll see this a little later, to utilize the reserve accounts for either the public school system stabilization nor the budget stabilization rainy day fund to fully fund the proposed COLA and Proposition 98. But instead, the governor is proposing to reduce current year 22-23 one-time revenue that we have received for arts, music, and instructional materials discretionary block grants and the Learning Recovery Emergency Block Grant. This could mean cuts to our planned spending for these programs in the budget year of 23-24 if approved. You'll see we have received 50% of our arts and music instructional materials discretionary block grant. The governor is proposing to eliminate the second 50%. For us, that would be, you'll notice here on this slide, $8.5 million. And then we received 100% of our Learning Recovery Emergency Block Grant. The governor's May revision proposal is to take back or reduce that by 32%. For us, that would be $13 million. The board has approved expenditure plans for both of these block grants. With the Arts, Music, Instructional Materials block grant, we have until June 30th of 26 to fully expend those dollars. And then for the Learning Recovery Emergency Block Grant, we have until June 30th of 28 to fully expend those dollars. So we will be watching that over the next couple of weeks. What is a budget? It's simply a policy document for us as a district to show the philosophy of the board, the administration, and the community. What's our financial plan for the year? It shows in the document, it shows where we've been. You'll see prior year numbers, and you'll see where we are going and what we call a multi-year projection. It's a guide for us and also a communication device that we can use to communicate to the community, to our employees. As you just heard, the presentation, the public hearing on the local control accountability plan, and it's a time for us to show that our budget supports the actions and services that are outlined in the local control accountability plan. Our budget development begins in January, as I stated earlier, with a set of assumptions for both revenues and expenditures. And you can see the assumptions listed here. We start with the January budget proposal, and then we update those revenues based on the May revision. Expenditure assumptions are largely based on staffing levels that we update annually for enrollment projections. We include step and column salary increases and also pension rate increases. And then we annually update our site and department budgets as well. This just shows you after we've applied the anticipated 8.22% COLA to our local control funding formula base rates. You'll see here what the current year base rates are per grade level of student. You'll see we've added the COLA amount to that to get a 23-24 base grant, and then for TK3, there's an add-on, what is called a grade span adjustment, in order for us to keep those student to teacher ratios below 24-1 on average for TK through third grade at each individual site. So you'll notice here the dollars increase as we get to the high school age student to $12,327 per student. And so the assumption here is that there's many more services provided at a high school for high school students. So it takes more dollars annually for that grade level of students. While we're projecting a slight increase to our average daily attendance, it could go higher if our daily attendance percentage rates in 23-24 rebound closer to the pre-pandemic attendance levels. And what I mean by that, for now, we are projecting a 92% attendance rate for our elementary grade levels, and a 90% daily attendance rate for our high school grades. By comparison, pre-pandemic, elementaries was 96, 97%, and then we would have seen our high schools around 94, 95%. So right now we're utilizing, based on our current patterns, we're utilizing a much lower attendance percentage to project our revenue. That could go up during the year if our attendance percentage exceed what we're currently projecting for our average daily attendance. This just shows a pie chart of our total general fund revenue. Typically, the local control funding formula goes in the 75 to 80% range, and then the remaining comes from federal revenue and state revenue and local revenue. This was the intent of the local control funding formula. So almost 80% of our dollars are controlled locally by us, and that is represented here by 77% of our revenue. Other revenue assumptions for 23-24, both one-time and deferred revenue funding in the current year for federal and state revenues have been removed from the 23-24 proposed budget. You'll see the red the red numbers that are listed there. But for example, in 22-23, if we look at state revenues, decreased by $74 million. Again, this is our budget, but we have received, as I mentioned earlier, this year we received $47 million in state revenue for the Learning Recovery Emergency Block Grant. Those dollars stay with us and can be spent over a 6-year period. However, the revenue is one time. It's been 100% received, so we removed that in the proposed budget year 23-24. So the $74 million decrease in state revenue is not we're losing $74 million. It's that it came to us as one time, and so we're not going to rebudget it in the next year because we've already received it. The same with federal revenue and a small decrease to our local revenue. Another piece of our revenue is contributions of our unrestricted revenue, our local control funding formula base rates, to our restricted programs when the funding is not sufficient to cover our program costs, or it could be required by statute without funding. And both of these next areas are that. Special education program is annually and has always been underfunded, meaning that the dollars we receive are not sufficient to cover the cost of the services provided. However, under the SELPA leadership of our Associate Superintendent, Mark Herbst, we have seen in the current year and going into this next year, a large expansion of services provided to our special needs students. And because the cost of these services far exceeds the revenue received, the contribution to our special education program side of the budget is projected to increase to $59 million in 23-24. Expenditures, I mean, again, this tells us that expenditures for our services for our most neediest pupils are far outpacing the revenue that is provided by the federal and state government. Just for comparison, that represents about 44% of our budget is now contributed by our unrestricted resources. So we have to provide 44% because the federal and state governments do not provide enough of those funds. Routine restricted maintenance is a statutory requirement. We have to set aside 3% of our planned approved expenditures for routine restricted maintenance. And for this coming year, that's about $15.5 million. As mentioned earlier, I mean, in January, we start projecting our revenues. Those are largely controlled by both the state and federal governments, where most of our control of our budget is on the expenditure side. The board, through this, through the approval of the LCAP, through the approval of our budget, the board decides how to spend the funds of which they're received. However, much like most districts in the state of California, the majority of our budget, the majority of our $550 million is spent on people. 82% of our budget, of our proposed general fund budget, is spent on people, certificated staff, classified staff, management staff, and that's 84% of our unrestricted. When we look at it just as our unrestricted general fund budget, we take out our categorical programs, it's 84% of our budget is spent on people. Those numbers are relatively low compared to other parts of the state of California. It's not uncommon to see those numbers in the 88 to 90% when comparison to the overall budget. And this just shows you a breakout of our expenditure levels in a pie chart. And obviously the three biggest ones here are certificated salaries, classified salaries, and employee benefits. Other expenditure assumptions that are included, the proposed LCAP items that you just heard, there's a reason that public hearing goes before this one, is because we have to show the board and the community that the LCAP items that you just heard are included in our $550 million proposed general fund budget. Restricted categorical revenues are budgeted, that we have budgeted, are fully expended. So this just says if we're anticipating to get a $5 million grant, we have $5 million of expenditures to match that. So we at this point in time, as we're projecting our budget, we intend to fully expend our categorical revenues. We do have built-in employee cost increases for STEP and column advancements. Those are included in our proposed budget. An estimated cost of about $3.8 million for both certificated and classified staff. Thankfully, there's not any further increases to the state teachers' retirement system. That remains at 19.1%, which it is in the current year. However, there is a $1.2 million increase for our classified employees or the PERS pension system. That rate is increasing to 26.68%. Again, that's a $1.2 million increase over the prior year. And then much like on the revenue side, we eliminate any one-time expenditures or carry over anything that's one-time in the current year. We, again, like I mentioned, we plan, it's 100% plan to fully expend. If we don't do it, we'll note that in our estimate, in our unaudited actuals, and then that'll be carried over again for the next year. But at this point in time, it's all removed from our proposed budget. We do have a proposed operational deficit in the proposed budget at the moment, about $6.8 million. And then you'll see in a minute when we talk about the multi-year projection that that deficit is actually eliminated throughout the multi-year projection. But what this shows is, again, our expenditures right now, our pattern is outpacing the revenue that we have. This year, we've added a number of new teaching positions that we don't have in the current year to address combination class sizes at the elementary level, to reduce those as much as possible, and also to help with our 9-12 enrollment class sizes at the 9th to 12th grade level. So we've added about around 50 new teaching positions to our budget in 23-24 than we have in 22-23. The next part of it is we assign our any fund balance. We do have a required 3%. District our side is required to set aside 3% of our any fund balance for economic uncertainties. And in addition to that, through the action of the board, we have an additional 3% that we can maintain both in the current and subsequent years. We do have this, and you typically see this in our audit report, a fair market value adjustment. And so that is cash on deposit with the county treasurer, and that's invested in a pool with other governmental agencies. As we typically did not for the last 5 or 10 years, we did not see a large swing in this, but this past year, with the stock market and investment portfolios the way they were, if you recall the audit adjustment, there was a large adjustment for our fair market value. We do have that included, as well as local control accountability plans, supplemental concentration grant funds, and then one-time expenditures. This slide shows the continued financial stability for our district in the current year and also throughout the multi-year projection. You'll notice we do have, if you go to the bottom, that is our unassigned reserve percentage. We have to, beginning this year, we have to be below 10%. That is a requirement. We cannot have more than 10% unassigned in our any fund. So if you'll notice, about 3 lines up, future budget allocations, we've kind of set that aside there. We've designated it $18 million in the current year. That adjustment is made in order to get us below the 10% unassigned reserve requirement. And this just shows, again, this just shows over the multi-year projection, we're able to maintain not only our 3% reserve, but the additional 3%. So it's a 6% reserve for economic uncertainties that the board has approved, in addition to a line that we have there in order to get us below the 10% reserve allocation. This slide is required for Ed Code 42127D. We have to provide at this public hearing for public review our reserve balances that exceed the 3%. And it funds 1, 11, 14, and 17 are all added together when you talk about what funds we have that exceed the reserve balances, and so that's why you'll see multiple lines on here, and you'll see what the reserve is for or what the set aside is for. It's just a requirement that we have to do at this public hearing. We are pleased to report that no district fund is projected to have a negative ending fund balance. These are the additional funds on top of the $550 million general fund. So you add another $100+ million to that, and so we are, we're exceeding $600 million of total funds that the Financial Services Department has to monitor on a yearly basis. We're also required to have multi-year projections. This just shows what they are. It's not a prediction. We do actually use assumptions to make our projections. It's required by law, AB 1200. And then we use that, whatever the assumptions are today, we use that to help us make decisions for the future. And again, here's shows that the current year we have right now in our proposed budget, assuming that the state adopts a budget with our assumptions in it, we have just under a $7 million deficit for the current year. And over the course of the multi-year projection, that $7 million goes away, but it's a $10 million surplus in the 25-26, using the assumptions in our 25-26 year of our multi-year projection. Next steps is a state budget adoption and a potential for a 45-day revision. We would be required to do that if our assumptions are substantially different than what the state budget approves. We had to do that this year. If you recall, by the time they adopted the budget from our public hearing, there was major significant differences in the revenue. So we did a 45-day revision this year. If that happens again, we'll do that within 45 days. Currently, there are significant differences between the governor, the Senate, and the Assembly budget committees. Both the Senate and Assembly have elected to either reject or minimize the cuts for the 2 block grants, but all 3 budget versions agree in funding the statutory COLA of 8.22% for the LCFF. Each House must pass a budget by June 15th in order for the elected members to avoid penalties. There could be, I just listed this here, there could be mid-year state budget adjustments. As we all know, our personal income tax is not due until October. Typically, that's April 15th. So a big piece of the state revenue will not be known until October. And so in addition to that, we have ongoing employee collective bargaining. With that,
there we are. We'll now close the regular open board meeting and open the public hearing for the review of draft 2023-24 budget for all funds. So are there comments now from the public about the budget items? Martinez.
It's just a final closing statement, comment of a concern given from a parent advocate / community activist. A lot of money is going to be passed. I just want to know one thing. When did it become us against you, you against us, we the people, we the parents, we the stakeholders, we the taxpayers, we the local voters? I heard tonight a lot of parent engagement, parent empowerment. That's my job. I don't get paid for it. I'm not on a grant, not on a 501c. Just 3rd generation of serving my community, making sure that the disadvantaged get equal opportunity as well. Mr. John Irvin, your question would be, when you asked to pull data for parent empowerment, parent engagement, Ceres Unified School District, and I brag about them because for almost 10 years now, they've been working with We Are La Raza Parents Union. All we have done is just want to close the gaps to better serve. So this year we challenged Denise and Dan, They gave us 5 topics. We were able to pull in over 150 people, each one of them. During the in-between times, we did what was called parents came to the district. We gave them breakfast, 1 hour, different school sites. They came with their concerns, their complaints. We put them into topics, and we worked through them. I never once have to go to their board. I never once have to complain because student support comes with me. Student support sees what I see. Student support goes back to the district and says, this is what Mrs. Martinez is complaining about. Let's fix the gaps. Series works with us in that way. I'm not here to fight. I'm done fighting. I got my big brothers right here that are gonna fight for me. I just wanna help work to serve our disadvantaged population. So the data would be, what are the parents able to do at the table so that we can say we're making changes here? Yeah, tonight we heard a lot of it. And Mr. Lopez, for you, we just had down at the King Kennedy Center on the 25th, we had Know Your Right trainings with California Legal Rule Associations. They're willing to come into the districts and help train on Know Your Rights and the LCAP. That's for free. Tonight we had HYLC ask for money. We don't have to give out our money. The community is willing to work for free. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments from the public?
Thank you, and I like that we're fiscally sound. Thank you to Mr. Surley. And I was thinking that when we talk about local control and local control accountability formulas and all that, it reminds me of when I was in college and I was hearing Ronald Reagan talking about give the rights back to the states. And the locals give us our rights. Okay, you got your rights, but you had to take the parents into account. And that's why sometimes when we want to participate, some people shut the door on us and they don't want to hear us. And it's like us versus them and get very defensive. And everything that we say has a reason why is wrong and why they're right. And I don't like that. It really is upsetting. And so I think that as a parent and taxpayer and all you voter and all kinds of things I can talk to you about, myself and other people, is that sometimes the school districts don't want to listen to the parents. And I think the school districts belong to the parents, whether you like it or not. It's a fact. And we are here to run the district. And you need to run it through our like. You know, this is not a totalitarian government that you sit here and decide how you're going to do it by yourselves. You need to listen to us. You really have to. That's my advice to you. You can take it or not, but I was thinking about that. You know, you got your local control, you got your local rights, okay, but we need to share them. And I had no problem with the budget, you know, and I was in the LCAP committee 2 years, for the last 2 years, so it's been a pleasure to serve there, and I see the goals and all that, and how things now, I can see the full circle too, and how we want to run the district and what we want and our goals, and so when I see intervention rooms, you know, what you do to children intervention rooms, and then what you say your goals are, and things just start disjunctive, and it's like, what the heck is going on here, you know? Every student matters, every moment counts, but not for those children in intervention rooms, then it makes me really upset. Thank you.
Do we have comments from the board or questions? Oh. Go ahead, please.
I see a lot of information regarding to these numbers. For what I see in this document, 77% of the local funding is local. Then that's like a understanding, because it's 77% of the proposition of this revenue fund is going to be spent with the mentality, with the ideas of the locals. Then in the other side, I don't know if you as an administrator can tell me what's the percentage of investment in parents participate in these meetings, on these committees, because I follow us this money and I don't see, you do not invest in parents, leadership, participation, then you're asking the same questions all the time. You're asking to yourself something that is not gonna be, you're not gonna be getting an answer. Then what's the percentage? Your administrator or he's gonna be answering me that? What's the percentage of investment to the parents in leadership and development? We need an answer because you're asking us as a parents. I'm asking you as an administrator, what's the percentage? Because if you guys asking us for our questions, for our participation, well, where's the development? Where's the leadership? Who's responsible for this? As mentioned before, no one is accountable. Who's accountable? No one. My time is almost up. But for what I see, as mentioned before, I see in other proposals, most of the funds are spent in salaries. And once again, I'm hearing that we're gonna be having money not coming in the future, but this board has to start thinking in the future how you're gonna be supplement that money that is gonna be here. Then are we gonna be decreasing the services? We don't have in our children. I already told you that 170 students from the school in which my kid participate is going to high school, and it's probably they're gonna be drop out. Just a small example. I don't know, you're as I mentioned to the administrator at the school, looks like you're seeing something and I'm seeing something different, but I'm really asking you something very precisely. If you don't invest in parents, if you don't invest in work, you're asking the same question once again. We can be here 10 years from now and asking the same question. Then you have to invest. Asking you to invest, thinking that is the minimum, and not asking questions that you're not gonna be having an answer.
Thank you. Do we have questions or comments from the board? Seeing none, we will now close the public hearing and reconvene the regular board meeting. And this was just a review, so we'll now move on to the next agenda item. And we'll come back as an action item at our next board meeting. Next item is B8, approval of resolution number 2223 through 32, authorizing assignment of teachers outside of credentialed academic major or minor under the licensing of certificated personnel law for the 2022 and 2023 school year. Mr. Henderson.
Yes, good evening, Board President Brown, trustees, Dr. Noguchi, and Cabinet. Item B8 recommends approval of a resolution authorizing the assignment of teachers outside of their credentialed academic major or minor. In this case, the resolution authorizes a classroom teacher with a multiple subject credential to teach a course in one of our junior high schools. It's been determined that the individual qualifies under the authorization granted through the resolution, and we recommend the board approve this item.
Great. Any questions or comments from the public on this agenda item? Seeing none, questions or comments from the board? Do I hear a motion to approve this agenda item? Motion by Trustee Mejia, second by Trustee Maestas. Those in favor? Aye. Thank you. That motion passes. Next is item B9, public notice to approve waiver request of California Education Code 44253.11 to submit waiver request to the California Commission on Teacher Credentialing. Mr. Anderson.
Yes, thank you again. Item B9 is a waiver request related to a credentialing requirement for 5 certificated instructors as required for the Commission for Teacher Credentialing. In this case, it applies to 5 CTE teachers. They're proficient in their respective industries, but who don't yet have the formal pedagogical training in instructing English learners. Upon approval, this waiver covers the requirement while they complete their coursework as part of the process of clearing their respective credentials, and we recommend the board approve this item.
All right, any comments from the public on this agenda item? Seeing none, any comments or questions from the board? Do I have a motion to pass this agenda item? Motion by Trustee Mejia, second by Trustee Marks. Those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. We now move to item B10, cancellation of existing Associate Superintendent Educational Services contract effective June 30, 2023, and approval of new Deputy Superintendent contract effective July 1st. Mr. Henderson.
Thank you, sir. As the board will see in the next agenda item, it's our practice to extend the terms of the contracts of executive cabinet members in order to maintain a 2-year contract term. There's one exception to note, which is the current item B10, due to the recommendation to appoint a deputy superintendent position, and specifically to appoint Mr. Brad Godot to the deputy position. In so doing, the item requests approval to cancel the existing Associate Superintendent Educational Services contract effective June 30th, 2023, and approve a new Deputy Superintendent contract effective July 1, 2023. The Deputy Superintendent position is central to assuming cross-divisional leadership at the direction of the superintendent. The position represents and acts on behalf of the superintendent, assumes designated responsibilities across division lines, provides leadership and oversight for the management of major district projects, and supports the superintendent's goals to involve staff in working to assure student achievement outcomes, among many other duties as assigned, all at the direction of the superintendent. Mr. Brad Godot has been selected by Dr. Noguchi for appointment to this highly important role. Mr. Godot has served in many roles over his nearly 25 years in MCS, such as classroom teacher, physical education at Davis High School, athletic director, activities director, associate principal of curriculum and instruction at Gregory High School, principal at Gregory High School, senior director, and most recently associate superintendent in educational services. And I'd be remiss to not point out his recent recognition as AXA Central Office Administrator of the Year. As a cabinet level position, an individual contract is presented to the board for approval. Government Code Section 54953 states in pertinent part, quote, prior to taking final action, a legislative body shall orally report a summary of the recommendation for a final action on the salary schedule, or compensation paid in the form of fringe benefits of a local agency executive as defined in subdivision D of section 3511.1 during an open meeting in which the final action is to be taken, end quote. So the following is the required verbal summary of the employment agreement. The agreement is from July 1, 2023 to June 30th, 2025. The annual salary is $217,867 plus longevity and advanced degree compensation for a total employer cost when adding statutory required fringe of $293,181. Mr. Godot is afforded health and welfare benefits, including 12 days of sick leave, consistent with other certificated administrators. The agreement also provides for payment of AXA membership dues and other professional organization as deemed appropriate by the superintendent, not to exceed $1,200 per year. The total increase in ongoing costs from the current contract to the new one is just over $13,000, as noted in the agenda item. It's recommended that the board cancel the existing Associate Superintendent Educational Service contract effective June 30th, 2023, and approve the new Deputy Superintendent contract effective July 1, 2023.
Thank you. Are there any comments from the public on this agenda item? Seeing none, any comments or questions from the board? Trustee Lopez.
Thank you. I just want to make clarification. So the existing superintendent educational service was still role will still fall under Mr. Godot, correct?
As deputy superintendent, those would be among his responsibilities.
Great. The reason why I asked because in the future, if a deputy, a deputy superintendent would not come from the sector of educational services, what would be done then? I'm concerned about the educational services position and what happens with transition, and should it be separate from the deputy superintendent and possibly have two contracts for one individual?
Two contracts for one. So if I'm understanding your question, is the question / concern that there may be another position available for hire for the Associate Superintendent of Ed Services?
Correct. I was asking if that would create a vacancy, or that would be mended into the new deputy superintendent position, and then therefore what would happen in the future if say the deputy superintendent was not the direct educational service superintendent.
So currently that would be closed. So the Associate Superintendent is you're working here in canceling, if it's approved, canceling that contract. So that would go away. We would not be hiring for that. Part of the reasoning, and actually I worked with Mr. Henderson on this, really the title. Should the title be Deputy Superintendent, or should the title be Deputy Superintendent of blank, blank, blank? I've worked in organizations that have both. Part of the compensation study that we did 3 years ago, the chart, what the title was just Deputy Superintendent, so that's why I chose to keep it at Deputy Superintendent with no thoughts of having another person overseeing Ed Services. The other piece to that is, rather than having a Deputy Superintendent of Ed Services, I really would like to expose Mr. Godot to a more wider breadth of information and experiences that potentially could be past the scope of Ed Services, and that's why I look to put the title as just strictly Deputy Superintendent. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that makes
Okay.
sense. Thank you for the clarification.
All right. I see no other comments or questions from board members. Do we have a motion to approve the cancellation of existing Associate Superintendent Educational Services contract effective June 30, 2023?
So moved.
All right, thank you. And motion by Vice President Irvin, second by Trustee Mejia. Those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries.
Almost done, guys, almost done.
Almost done. Now we're at B11, approval of amendments to existing employment agreements for Associate Superintendent, Assistant Superintendent, and Chief Officer contracts effective July 1, 2023 through June 30 of 2025. Mr. Henderson.
Going to bring it home here. Tonight, the board's asked to approve amendments to the employment agreements for management employees, specifically cabinet-level positions. The amendments are included in the attachments within the agenda item. The employment agreements are revised to extend the term of employment from currently June 30th, 2024 to June 30th, 2025, consistent with the district practice for such individual contract positions. The employment agreements are for the following management employees: Tim Zerley, Mark Herbst, Mike Rich, Mike Henderson, Russell Selkin, and Dr. Heather Contreras. The employment agreements do not change the existing salaries or forms of compensation. Therefore, as listed in the financial impact, there's not an additional increase to the board-approved salary schedule as a result of these amendments. It's recommended that the Board of Education approve the amendments to the existing employment agreements for Associate Superintendent, Assistant Superintendent, and Chief Technology Officer contracts effective July 1, 2023 through June 30th, 2025.
Thank you. Any comments from the public on this agenda item?
I was wondering why they don't get any salary increase. You know, things are getting very expensive lately. Wherever we go, everything is expensive. So I was thinking I was going to hear this big increase in the salary, and then there's zero. So I'm pleased to hear that, but I think, you know, you might consider 5% increase at least then. I don't know, but It's just a comment, I think they work very hard and they should get paid for it. Thank you.
Thank you. Any comments or questions from the board? And do I hear a motion to approve this agenda item? Motion from Trustee Marks. Second from Trustee Mejia. Those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you.
And we have moved item B12 off the agenda. Any items to be placed on future Board of Education agendas? And do I hear a motion to adjourn?
Move.
Motion by Trustee Urban. Any second? Second, Trustee Daily. Those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Let's go home.